think so. Now let me just look here.
There's some place we can check.
Yeah, I'm checking it here.
Think about all the stuff we've learned over the
No
last
kidding.
year.
We learned just as much during these ELO. Okay.
Haven't we been doing that all year? Oh, awesome.
Okay. Wait a minute. It's saying an error occurred. Let's see.
Don't worry, I can't.
Eh,
I'm like, why could my parents have given me a
Can you check? Can you go to the website and check the link? Why couldn't your parents what?
give me a less common name?
Oh. Okay, is it flashing or is it just fine? Oh, it's hearing me, so that's good. Okay. I have to remember to be quiet.
Shut your
Yeah. All right, I don't. You can close that, Justine, if you need to. Yeah. He is, Milo is after Maya, before Jocelyn. Yep. There you are.
Welcome. Teaser.
As well as our wonderful mentors, some of who are here today, for supporting this program. And ELO is a semester-long student-driven project. It's an opportunity for a student to pursue a topic of interest, a cause or passion, with the support and guidance of a coach and a mentor. Students select their topics and design the steps of their learning. They complete 60 hours of work and meet periodically with their mentor and school coach. The project culminates with the final presentation, highlighting what they've learned and reflection on the process. This spring, we have 14 students participating. The topics range from making a skateboard, decorating cakes, declaring a climate emergency, and exploration of the planet. After each presentation, there'll be an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. We also have a live chat that Ms. Robertson moderating for us. So if you're watching at home, please feel free to participate. And we encourage all of you to take time, ask some questions at the end. So our first presentation this evening, we have a slight change in the program. Elena Miller will be presenting first, and she will be presenting on learning to code in Swift and Xcode.
Hello, my name is Elena Miller, and I'm a junior here at Yarmouth High School. For this ELO in the spring semester, I decided to learn how to program in Swift and Xcode. So in this presentation, I'll be talking about my learning goal, my approach, some of the challenges I faced, the impact of COVID-19, as well as the outcome of this ELO and the future steps, goals, and plans I have regarding this project. So the learning expectation that I decided to follow for this semester was to demonstrate critical, creative, and innovative thinking. Mostly because this matches everything you have to do to code an app. You have to do every single part of that, and I thought it made the most sense for an expectation. So my roadmap or my approach and my journey throughout this ELO had some bumps, as you can tell. So I first started learning Swift and Xcode. Now, it's a little confusing, but Swift is basically the programming language that you actually code in. So that's Swift. Xcode is what you do that programming in. So you'll write the program of Swift in the Xcode, which then runs the app and makes it work. So after I started learning that, I met with the Yarmouth Pantry, which you guys will learn more about why I met with them later in regards to my app idea. After meeting with them and having positive results, I continued learning Swift. I also learned the Swift UI, which is basically just another way to use Swift and design the actual look of the app. I then designed the app C-Stop for the main app challenge. So the main app challenge is hosted through Tyler Technologies, and it's an opportunity for high school students to submit apps of their design. Last year, I designed the app Scoregenics using a different programming language, Java, and actually submitted it and won 3rd place. So I wanted to submit again this year, and I designed the app C-Stop to do so. app that I was designing. And just now I've started to learn how to use cloud data, which is a feature of Apple and Apple apps, and then integrating some of these features into the Food Pantry app. So I had a lot of challenges in this ELO, but I think everyone has and goes through them. The first challenge was learning Swift. So I've learned other programming languages before, like JavaScript, Python, those are all similar programming languages, but different. And so I wanted to learn Swift, which is what you use to design an Apple app. However, there's not a lot of information out there and resources on how to start learning it. There's a ton when you understand it, there's a ton on how to level it up, but there's not enough on how to just do it. Now there's some focus at that whole general introduction to coding in general, but I kind of already knew that. I did the in-between introduction. And so that was really challenging to find resources, but luckily my mentor, Tim Hart, was able to get me going and get me that introduction that I needed. Xcode itself, which is the place you code in, is also really confusing. It's meant for top-level coders, creators to make apps. It's meant to do a lot. And I was not ready to do a lot. So it was just really confusing on how to use. So for example, there's two modes of designing an app in Xcode. There's storyboard and UI. I started with storyboard, which is object-oriented programming, but basically it means you design the screen ahead of time and then you connect it to your code. There's also Scriptwriting, which uses MVM, which is basically where you design the app in your code. So you'll code it to put a box on the screen. So that was a little confusing. I'm sure explaining it was confusing too. So I also had challenges with cloud data. So cloud data is basically this feature that allows someone remotely to update an app. So update the text box in the app or something. And then it allows it to be pushed out to all other users of the app. So Facebook, when you scroll on your phone, someone updated it remotely and now you're seeing it on your phone, right? You don't need an actual update from the App Store to see that. However, in order to implement cloud data, you have to have an Apple developer's program account. You see, that would be great, except that I'm not 18. So I wasn't able to make myself an account. Luckily, my in-school learning coach, Mrs. Barr, was able to set me up with an account, but there's a lot of steps to get going to the account. And my original plan was to have this ready for the main app challenge. If you're coming up on a deadline, it just didn't work. So that was definitely a challenge. But once you got the account all set up now, actually implementing it is kind of difficult because all the resources for implementing it are aimed for these upper level coders, designers, not there yet. So I'm still actually working through that challenge of implementing it. And then lastly, I hinted about it in the cloud data part, but the main app challenge, there was a deadline, May 10th, and I really wanted to submit my food pantry out for it. However, it was not ready, cloud data was not ready. Overall, it just wasn't ready as an app. And so that's where I actually designed CStop, which was really stressful, but it was fun to really put my knowledge into an actual app that was ready to go. So the impact of COVID-19, okay, this is weird, but they were all positive impacts for me. I don't think there was one negative from it. So the first is that my food pantry app actually developed because of COVID-19, and I'll talk more about what it is later, but just know that. Virtual meetings with my mentor were already considered the norm. Both of us were already used to using Zoom or WebEx, and so it's just normal. We were able to connect even though he lives 2 hours from here. And then also a lot of online resources came out of Swift, or out of COVID-19, especially aimed at Swift. So there was more to learn, and there were more resources available to help people learn. So now the outcome of this ELO. I was able to create 2 apps. One was CStop, which was the COVID-19 screening tool for prevention. I figured that was kind of a mouthful, so I gave it an abbreviation. And then also the Yarmouth Community Food Pantry app. Now, CStop is usable right now. Food Pantry, my goal is to have it done by the end of June, July. So I'm just going to walk through each of the apps I coded. So the first app is Stop. And this app is a 4-tab screen app that provides users with information about COVID as well as a daily health screener so that they can check themselves and make sure that they are all set to go with their activities throughout the day. So the first page, the home page, the image on the left, has a today's healthy tip, which changes each time you open the app, as well as a reminder to fill out the daily health screening and some helpful links that when you click on will actually take you to that website in the web browser on your phone. So the daily health screening is the second tab, and this was the core aspect of this app. I had this idea and then I developed everything else around it. So this daily health screener is probably similar to other ones you've used before, but you can just select whether you have a symptom or not, and you go through each of the 3 pages. Now at the end of the 3 pages, you'll get one of 2 responses. You'll either get a "You're clear" screen, if you didn't have any symptoms or you're all set to go, or you'll get a "Please stay home." So based on your symptoms, they recommend staying home until you figure out what to do. And there's also more information, links just so that like, oh no, I need to stay home, what can I do? That's easy information. There's also the frequently asked question page, which has a few different frequently asked questions, as well as like a little drop bar with answers to them, as well as links to more websites with more frequently asked questions. And then lastly, there's just the about page, which says the name and a link to a video of me explaining it more and how to use it. So now this is the app that I'm actually really excited about. My end goal going into it was this. So it's for the Yarmouth Community Youth Pantry, and it's this donation app. So the end goal is that the food pantry will be able to remotely add what they need. So for example, they need 10 jars of peanut butter. And then users in the community, when they go to the grocery store, can pull up the app and say, oh, I can get the peanut butter, or like I already have peanut butter that I don't have it open. And then the user can go into the app and add, so you'll see on the third image, they've added the construction paper and printer paper. So then they'll confirm that, and then the food pantry will see that, and they can drop that food off, or the items in this case, at the food pantry. And now this really allows the food pantry to get their needs out there quickly, get them received quickly, but also prevent them from getting too many items. So for example, when I was talking to them, they said that at Thanksgiving, they asked for, I want to say it was beans. And so many people gave them beans, which was great. But it was an item that they only used during Thanksgiving, and they had way too many that they couldn't do anything with. So this app will have built-in stops, so after 10 peanut butter jars are added, you can't add anything else more. It'll get removed. So this is a hard stop so that they get just what they need and not an excess that they don't need. Lastly, there's just a frequently asked question page. I haven't completely formatted that yet, so it looks a little weird, but those are just some general things that the food pantry themselves asked for and would like included in the app as in terms of questions. So my future plans, in regards to the Yarmouth Community Food Pantry app is to integrate Cloud so that it's actually available to use and that it actually works like it's supposed to. My other goal is to push it out to the Yarmouth community so that, and the food pantry said they would help me with this, so that it's useful and that it actually gets used. And then backing up a step, a little zooming out, in Swift and Xcode, I want to continue to learn and to build on the developed skills. Now that I have a better base, I can really start doing more and learning more, but this ELO wants me to get the strong base and dedicate the hours to it that I needed to get that base. And then, zooming out into more future plans, college, I kind of knew this going into the ELO, but it's just confirmed it even more that I really want to do something in computer science, so probably a major in it. And I really like software development, which is basically what coding apps is. So that helped just give me a little bit snippet more of what I want to do in my future. Lastly, I just want to thank Tim Hart, who was my mentor. He works for Apple, and he's been instrumental in guiding me through learning Swift and Xcode, and he's provided me with a ton of resources as questions come up. He's just been really helpful. And then also Ms. Barr, who has answered all my emails. I've sent her so many emails. One Saturday, she was helping me set up the Apple Developer Programming Camp because I needed it for the Meetup Challenge. And so she's just been really helpful, and she's asked me questions that made me think and grow more. So I just want to thank her. And then also the Yarmouth Community Food Pantry, who met with me, and when I told them my idea, just like accepted it, gave me all the resources I need in order to make this work. So that's the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions?
I love the food pantry. So if I go buy those 10 jars of food, what then happens?
So after that, if you saved it on the app, the peanut butter will be removed from the app, so no one else can buy those 10 jars. And then you will take those jars to the food pantry and drop them off, and then they can confirm it somehow that they received those jars. Yes.
How did you find your mentor?
So Miss Barr actually connected me with her. Going into the ELO, one of my biggest worries was actually how I was going to find a mentor. I was really worried. I was like, I don't have a mentor. Like, can I even do it? I don't have one. But Miss Barr was like, wait, I have this contact. And so reached out to him, and he was like, yeah, sure. So yeah, that's how I found my mentor, and I'm very thankful for that. Yes.
I'm curious about how you decided to work with the food pantry. Like, what? I'm sorry if I missed that, but I didn't think you did. Like, why the food pantry? Like, how did you decide that?
So my mom and I were like talking randomly. I think it was early in the fall, so it was like a while ago. We were just talking, and she was bringing the fact that the food pantry right now posts their needs on Facebook. But I mean, I don't know how many people have tried, but it's really hard to go back and find the post on Facebook, especially when it's like to a group. And so I was like, wait, like maybe I could make this more streamlined and easier for everyone to access instead of just posting to a Facebook page and then like getting too many donations of one thing. So I thought it would be a cool way to streamline and make it easier for everyone in the community, both the food pantry and just all citizens.
This is a big question, so no pressure at all if you haven't thought about it. But have you put any thought to how to make that the food pantry applicable to other places? Because there are a lot of other organizations just like that.
Yeah, so actually going into this ELO, when I was talking to Ms. Barr about it, we were like, even if the Yarmouth Food Pantry says that they couldn't use it, like they have a better system that they already use, of making it more generalized so that other food pantries can use it no matter where they are. Right now it's just in the food pantry sense, but I could definitely, like, it would be easy to just move it over for whichever food pantry would like to use it.
Awesome job, Elena. Very good. What I wanted to know is, could you find any support from the Apple as a company to help young people like you explore their language more? Are they willing to sort of chip in any extra help?
So my mentor, Tim Hart, actually, if I'm getting this correct, designs the resources that Apple pushes out to schools and to students to learn coding. So like Apple has like an anyone can code, like they have their Swift playgrounds, they have their workbooks that teachers can use to teach like the AP Computer Science Principles curriculum in Swift. And so my mentor actually writes that and designs it and pushes it out there. So he was actually able to help me because he made those resources and knew exactly if those resources were to turn to.
No, we don't have any right now. I have one other thought though, Lane. I'm sorry. There's an organization in Portland called Maine Needs, I think is.
Yes.
And I wonder, like, they're always like, we need this, and then they're like, no, stop, don't bring us any more like women's like size 7 shoes or whatever, Could you think that your app could be easily configured to work in like that kind of setting too?
Yes, especially with the way like I'm slightly familiar with how they function and how their general processes are, and I feel like it follows a very similar way to what this app was designed for. So I think it could easily work.
And now she gets to go and keep the sound on. Next, we have Zoe Siegel, who is going to be talking about her experience drafting a proposal for the Yarmouth Town Council to convince them that we need to declare a climate emergency.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. All right. My name is Zoe Siegel. I'm a senior. As Ms. Carlisle said, my ELO this semester was to convince the Yarmouth Town Council to pledge climate emergency. So I just wanted to start where this idea began. So last year, I worked with a bunch of classmates, and we actually founded an environmental club for YHS called the Green Voices Society. And our first big project was selling utensil kits for the cafeteria to discourage the use of plastic utensils. And so these are just some pictures of examples of utensil kits we sold. And that was kind of our first big project as a club. And then, unfortunately, due to COVID, our club didn't have a bunch of activity towards the end of last year, throughout the summer, and then the start of this school year. And so we were actually looking for a way to kind of revitalize the club and get some new momentum. And I was actually contacted by a person from Maine Youth Climate Justice, explaining the process of climate emergency, and asking if we could spearhead a project for Yarmouth. So just a little overview of what a climate emergency is that it is a proposal where a town, state, any kind of governing body pledges to end all greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. So far in the United States, 1,855 different municipalities have done this, including 5 in Maine, as you can see, Bangor just did recently. And a big part of this proposal is that the governing body pledges to commit 1% of their budget to this project and creating a task force that will slowly introduce ways to kind of end greenhouse gas emissions. And so our task for the Green Voices Society, and my task personally, was to just take this proposal and make it Yarmouth specific. So our first initial steps were reaching out to teachers and getting their approval, of the club, and then doing a lot of research on different aspects of the climate in Yarmouth. Right here is just one example of us where we looked at the effect of climate change in Casco Bay. And so we took all of this research and we kind of divided it into 2 sections, a proposal and a petition. And just looking at the proposal in depth, as you can see, it kind of says the big goal at the top, and then this first section I call the whereas clause section. That's where we put most of our research, especially the Yarmouth specific research, just detailing why climate change is important and why action is really important right now. And then the next portion is, I call it the resolves portion, and it's where we specifically outlined what we want the Yarmouth Town Council to pledge. And this includes a 180-day deadline where the Town Council comes together and decides how much of their budget they can give to ending greenhouse gas emissions. And then they also, with this, they're pledging to create a task force. And the minimum budget that they can pledge is 2%. And then also to just promise to continue supporting this effort across Maine and across the country. And then the second part that we kind of dived into was a petition. We got 158 signatures so far. We got people from Yarmouth, students and teachers from high school, and then teachers from HMS, and we also posted on Facebook. And this is just a little screenshot of the form we used. So kind of our next step after designing the proposal and the petition was presenting to the local community for energy efficiency and sustainability. And that's actually where I was put in touch with my mentor, Toby Ahrens, who Mr. Hill helped me get in contact with. And so in early March, we presented to this group kind of as a practice presentation. And then they gave us feedback and gave us kind of their thoughts on our presentation and our ideas as a whole. And these are two examples of our presentation right here that we actually made. And so we got a ton of feedback, and it was really, really helpful. And we put it all in a doc to compress it. And the biggest point of feedback we got was to decide, when we talk about a budget, we talk about how much money is being put towards a climate emergency resolution. Are we talking about the committee? Are we talking about the community budget? Or are we talking about just the municipal budget? And I was confused by this, so just to kind of define, the committee budget would include the governing body of the town, but then also the school, so the school committee. Meanwhile, the municipal budget would just be all the funds associated with the town government. So after kind of taking in this huge question, we decided to make it the municipal budget. After meeting with Mr. Hill, we thought that this was the best way to just start, not small, because ending greenhouse gas emissions is very big, but kind of taking it a little slowly and just starting with the town budget. So after that, we kind of separated our goals into 3 sections. One was creating a group dedicated to underclassmen connection, because the Green Voices Society is led by mostly seniors, and we want to make sure that our efforts are continued next year and in the years to come. And then another section was dedicated to proposal revision, because we got a lot of feedback from our presentation to the Committee for Energy and Efficiency and Sustainability, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to take their suggestions and implement them into our proposal. And then the third section was petition outreach. Posting on the Facebook page is actually part of this, but we just wanted to get more community members involved. So kind of just the status of where the project has been and where it is now. Through April and May, we finished our proposal as a club, and we reached out to the Yarmouth Town Council to get a presentation date. Unfortunately, it's been really hard to find a date that works with the Town Council and works with our club, and so there has been a bit of a standstill of progress with that. But I've honestly just learned that that's okay, and I'll talk about this more later. But kind of having a little loss of momentum with my project opened up new opportunities for me. I was actually able to get in contact with a student from HMS who's going to be a freshman at YarmouthHS next year, and she's very involved with climate initiatives at HMS. And I was able to work with her on implementing the use of paper bags at HMS instead of all plastic trays during COVID when they went to get breakfast and lunch. And then just an update for where we are now. We're hoping to get a presentation date for the council for early summer, so maybe in a few weeks. And then we are having a meeting next week to go over the new leadership of the club and kind of elect some sophomores and juniors who want to kind of lead it in the coming years. Because as you can see in these slides, climate change is just, the voices are the youth, and a big priority is that I want to make sure that our club continues our work. And then kind of looking ahead, I personally would love to act as a liaison in college to the Green Voices Society and just help in any way I can. And then I'm also going to college in Providence, And they actually started a 2019 climate justice plan there, where they're committing to have electricity be 100% carbon free by 2050 and 80% of vehicles electric by 2050. And so I would love to help in that pledge and commitment in any way I can. And there's actually a climate lab on campus, and they're working to make the campus net zero by 2040. And I signed up last week as an interested freshman, which was a little scary, but I am excited to hopefully work with that lab. And then just a little bit more reflection. I really love doing this ELO because I love doing independent work. But with that, I also learned a really important skill of delegation and working with my members of the Green Voices Society, but then also letting them do their own work. And then learning that it's okay to lose momentum in a project, and in the modern day world with people who have busy schedules and are doing different projects than you are, it's totally okay that your project might take a turn that you're not expecting. And I'm hoping to still present to the town council, but I'm also just really grateful that I've been able to go through this process and design the proposal. And I'm excited to see where the Green Voices Society takes it next year. And just to conclude, I want to say thank you to my mentor, Toby Arens and Ms. Roberson. Thank you so much for everything. And that's it.
So you worked with quite a few people in the community, and I wonder what you think about just kind of the nature of that work, so that ELOs always have you reaching outside of the school building, or almost always, but you actually kind of network with quite a few people, not just a single outside mentor. And I wonder if that made you think about possibilities for us to connect more with our directly local community, but also beyond as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the main networking I did was when we presented to the Committee for Energy Efficiencies and Sustainability. And that was just us hopping on a Zoom call with like 15 members and presenting to them. And it was really intimidating, but I really enjoyed talking to them. I got a lot of emails from the members after, just offering any support that they had. And so it was a great experience for me, and I think it would be great if students kind of explored more of the clubs and communities and governing bodies we have here in Yarmouth, because I just definitely learned that parents and residents are really, really supportive. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you sit with a position?
Yes.
Okay, is it still signable, or is it like,
Yes, it is.
where am I going to sign it?
So we have a form. We have a little website, and we also have an Instagram page with the form. I can send it to you. Yeah.
What's your Instagram handle?
GBS Climate Emergency, I believe. Yeah, so definitely in Maine, because the Maine Youth for Climate Justice have kind of established these liaisons in different communities. It's been very youth driven. The picture of Bangor that just established, or just committed to climate emergency, that was all youth run. And we actually had some help from students in Sophomore who just established it in August before school started. So yes, definitely very youth driven. Yes.
What would Yarmouth actually have to do to be carbon neutral in 2030? Like, what were the biggest polluters?
Yeah, I would say the biggest kind of talking point that came up was 295. And if the emissions that come from all the cars that go through 295, if we're counting that kind of in the resolution, and that was actually a factor that had us decide to just stick to the municipal budget, because that would, the biggest change I would say is that just the Yarmouth governing body would have to make all would have to have all electrical vehicles by 2030. And that would be probably one of the biggest changes. That's a good question.
Our next presentation will be Hannah Flores Defensino. She participated in the ACE Mentor Program and worked on the design of a community park and recreational center in Brunswick.
Hi, my name is Hannah Flores Defensino, and today I'll be presenting on how I designed a community park in my yard. To start things off, I'll talk a little bit about ACE. So ACE is a program I did with my ELO lecture. It's a national mentoring program where architects, construction workers, and engineers can come together to teach kids about their respective fields. Every week, a group of around 20 kids and a couple mentors met up to learn about each field, and all of that is in hopes of creating a final project where we apply everything we learned throughout the year. So I wanted to participate in this ELO because I wanted to familiarize myself more with the field of engineering, and because I thought it was a good way to see how different types of engineering can be applied to the community. And to familiarize myself with such an engineering. So my initial approach to the program was to learn in depth about the principles of engineering and architecture, and then more towards the middle of the program, I had to shift my thinking into learning how to, figuring out how to apply that knowledge into the final project. And then towards the end, I had to apply that project into a community park. So for the final project, my mentor, Ben, broke up kids into 2 to 3 person groups. And he assigned each of us with a project. And for my group's case, we were assigned the community park. I was in a group with Lily and France and Ezra Pantry, who are students in Portland, and we worked together to create this project. The point of the project was to create a sustainable park that provides recreational activities for people of all ages, and that incorporates green infrastructure to combat climate change. In the beginning of the project, we needed some inspirational photos to guide ourselves throughout the design process. So here are some of the pictures. At the bottom right, you can see green roofs and solar panels and just a lot of overall green space and open space. Towards the middle of the project, we used the program SketchUp to design some initial features for the building and park. We all sort of did our own. This was mine. This was Ezra's, and this one was Liliana's. So the final design process makes up of a couple sketches and drafts. And this is the final floor layout. For the first floor, we have an auditorium, changing rooms, toilets, bathrooms, community classroom and office spaces, and the stairs and elevator. For the second floor layout, we have common areas, more common areas, classroom space, halls, offices, bathrooms, and an opening in the floor for a balcony on the first floor. The second requirement for the project was to submit sketches and drafts for the final design. So this would be the final design for the community building. And this is the final community site plan. Starting from the left, you can see a walk mural, tennis and basketball courts, greenhouse, water pool, playground, and community center, water features, gazebos, and the entrance to the parking garage and dock. floor plan, we included storage rooms for the auditorium, as well as plenty of parking spaces and an elevator to be accessed from all floors. For the second floor plan, we have all the features I mentioned before, as well as the center. You can see the etched rectangle, which is the balcony. So, a third requirement for the program was to submit 3D renderings of the entire park. And this would be the rendering of the building. You can see skylights and threads for communities, as well as a solar panel for sustainability. Due to lack of time and which is not enough computer storage space, we weren't able to complete a full rendering of the entire park. So we just have the building, but I think we can still turn it on. Some learning outcomes from this project have been the introduction of SketchUp software. So I've used different CAD softwares before. But this one was my first time using the rendering software, so it was nice to use it for the first time. I also was introduced to structural, electrical, and construction engineering, which has helped me decide which type of engineer I want to be in the future. I've also learned a couple lessons about sustainability and how important it is for the future of architecture and engineering. Some challenges with COVID have been that all of our meetings have been virtual, and all of the projects and assignments we've gotten from the project mechanics have been at home. We haven't had much hands-on learning. The group work for the final project was separate from the meetings, so it was sort of hard to schedule that with two other kids at work. Overall, I think the big challenge is managing ELO time and schoolwork time. Sort of balance that well. Also, drafting and 3D models can be really tedious and time-consuming. It was really hard to make sure all the scales and all the dimensions were accurate. Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions?
Can you talk a little bit, you looked at engineering and architecture, what you found
Really structural engineering. Sort of studying and designing the skeletons of the buildings. Really interesting.
When you were designing the building and the grounds, were you thinking of a particular community that it would fit into, or were you thinking for, just more conceptually, what should there be?
Right, so the entire base program based all of the projects off of plot of land in Brunswick. And theoretically, if we were to build this community park, it would be a lot of land near the transit station in Brunswick.
We have a question from online, and if you could just make sure that you speak into the microphone really clearly, because some of our people online are having a little hard time hearing. But the question is, what does it mean to have a sustainable park?
So it means that we use less fossil fuels and use more clean energy than we can. For example, we can use bigger windows and open windows to ventilate more instead of using AC and stuff. Also, using green roofs to recycle water. That's also really good.
Thank you.
So again, a project like this is multifaceted. There's so many different things going on here. Where did you find most of your research information on many different aspects of this, like landscape architecture, structural engineering, park layout? You're able to talk to actual people, or do you do most of your research online?
Right, so every week we met with actual engineers and architects. So we just one-on-one talked about it and kind of guided us through the process. We didn't do much research because we just had the people there to teach us right there. So. There were around, I think, 7 other groups in the ACE program. Some designed residential buildings, others designed a transit station, and a couple also designing a community park. So there was a lot.
Amazing stuff, and then I did get to see her all semester working kind of in a challenging situation with everything virtual, but she did a really great job working in a group environment on the group project. Because I never got to see each other in person. Next we have Jasper Chapel, and he is going to talk about his ELO making a skateboard by hand.
Hi, I'm Jasper Chapel. For my ELO, I built a skateboard from scratch. So during this presentation, I'm going to talk about sort of a summary of the process and my learning goals, so what I wanted to learn during it, and sort of my approach with a mentor and navigating problems on my own. Some challenges that I faced, some related to COVID-19, and just challenges in general, and then the outcome of my project, so the physical outcome and sort of what I learned. And then at the end, I'll do a small reflection. So skateboarding has played a huge role in my life in the past year and a half. In my second semester of sophomore year, I went to France and picked up skateboarding, which was supposed to be a semester abroad, but unfortunately I got cut short. But I did pick up skateboarding there and came back, and I've been skating with my best friends ever since. So it's been great. And here's a short video of clips I've recorded over the past year. Here we go.
Winnie the hands, Winnie the bag, bubbly. Look at the cash coming in. Coming to man, see what you can plug in me. To see the bag, clean out a job, checking me. Don't make you ask me that I don't want none of it. This is mad about it, had enough of it. Watch you say it, how the pocket is shaking. Got me hot as a laser, my body people are rated. We have to prove for the paper. Had a dream one day, El Camino, all that is. You just get so big. With the red on me, big. You can flat it, and I might just roll out. I might just roll out.
All right, so in that last clip, you can see the board broke, which happens sometimes skateboarding, and boards are pretty expensive, so that's sort of part of the reason that I had the idea to do this project. And with the mold I made, I can keep making skateboards in the future. So that also relates to woodworking. In the past couple of years, I've done some woodworking, mostly with my dad. I've helped him build a shed, a barn, and a couple weeks ago, we built my bed frame, which turned out great. But a lot of that has been guided in sort of a cookie cutter fashion, and I had someone to help me the whole time. So this project was great to have creative freedom with, and just to go about it on my own. So next, I have a video of the steps I took to assemble or to build the board. So I'm going to sort of narrate it as I go, and just so you guys know what's going on. So this here is the wood I started with, and then I'm cutting out the side profile of the board, and then tracing it onto each piece I had, and cutting it out with a bandsaw, cutting it out, which left me with these two molds, a concave and a convex mold that fit together. This is I put wood glue between each piece and screwed them together to assemble. And then this is an angle grinder with sandpaper on it to carve out the mold and sculpt it to what I want the board to be, to look like, I guess. And so you can see here, this is a time lapse I took me sculpting out the molds. So these two molds actually, I lied at the beginning. The title was, one sec. All right, I can keep like that, I guess. It said I built a skateboard. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to finish it yet, but this is what's going to be the skateboard. It's not done yet, obviously, so this is 7 million pieces of wood, and so the next steps in my project in the next couple of weeks is going to be putting an adhesive or wood glue in between each of these, and then pressing them between those two molds you saw, and that'll create the skateboard. And then I'll be cutting out the board shape of this, and then attaching the trucks, or if you don't know what that is, it's just the wheels with the metal part between like the axle, and then essentially it'll be done. But yeah, that'll come in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully I can finish that before school ends. Press that again. Sorry. It's just like. Okay, there we go. Back on track. Okay. Got it. Sorry about this. Both at the same time. All right, there we go. I'll press the buttons. Okay, so my learning goal for this was, as I said, I've been skating for about over a year, and I have never really inspected I've never actually inspected or like looked at a skateboard as closely as I have until this project, and just sort of learned how they're made like from scratch. Like it was cool to learn the process, but my learning goal was to figure out how that worked and to improve my woodworking skills. So there's great resources in the shop here to use, lots of tools that I expanded my knowledge of using and learned how to use better than I did before. So that was great, and my approach to the project was to make classic handmade style board. So you saw the mold that I was sculpting out with the sandpaper. I could have done that by uploading a profile of a skateboard from the internet onto some computer software that would load it into a machine in the shop here, and then cut it out like just with a machine. I wouldn't be really doing anything, and that's not what I wanted to do because it seemed less personal to me. But this is the approach I took, and so far it's going great. It's taken a little longer than I thought it would, but it's also been great to learn as I went, or as I go, I guess, because I'm still doing it. So problems, like I said, a lot of the woodworking I've done has been guided, and this is great to have to navigate my own problems and have to figure it out on my own, and not to be able to ask someone next to me what to do when I have a problem. And the way I learned how to do it was through some YouTube tutorials and articles that I found, and obviously Mr. Pittman helped a lot through the process. So some challenges I had were finding time to work and timing. A couple times when I went in, so Mr. Pittman had to be there when I was working, so I was able to use power tools and stuff like that. And sometimes when I'd go in, he wouldn't be there, and so I wasn't able to work on it, which was okay, but I just had to come back a different day, so that was a little challenge, sort of going through the project, but also finding materials. There was one day where I spent a little under 3 hours trying to find a specific piece of sandpaper, and I'd gone a different day and looked as well. So I went to Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace, Hancock, and Main Hardware. Finally found it at Main Hardware after hours of looking, and brought it back and was able to use it. But I finally got that, and getting the molds to fit together is sort of a current problem I'm having right now. Those two molds are they're not sitting together right. I've worked on it for the past couple weeks, and they're fitting a lot better now than they were, but I got to sand out the imperfections and figure out how to get those to fit together, but hopefully I can do that soon. And then some effects from COVID-19. So the price of lumber was definitely the biggest one. If I had bought this wood, 2 years ago, it would have been half the price that it was now. So the price of lumber has more than doubled actually. And that's partly because of COVID, because a lot of people are cooped up in their houses doing woodworking projects. So more people are buying more wood, and the price is just going up, and it's still going up, so that's not fun. But yeah, that was a little bit of a challenge, but shout out to my mom for buying the wood. I was not about to spend $130 on that, but so that and work time. So during the hybrid mode school, it was just a little tough to be sitting in my room all day doing online school then have homework to do as well, and then have time to also go into school while Mr. Pittman was still here, while the school was still open. So fortunately that ended a while ago, so I was able to work more on it. But there's honestly been not much but effect from COVID. It's been pretty good. It's not affected. So some outcomes. I gained knowledge on new tools I learned how to use. So the bandsaw you saw I was cutting the wood out with, I've used that before, but I am able to use it more efficiently now and more accurately. The angle grinder with sandpaper, I've never used that. And sort of throughout sanding and mold, I've been able to use that a lot more efficiently too, because just experience with it helps, and I've been able to take off mold in a little amount of time. And that sort of connects to just new skills I've learned. Obviously creating a mold for a skateboard. And hopefully physical actual skateboard that I can create in the future. But yeah, hopefully I can get that produced in the next couple weeks. And sort of a reflection, this project has really helped with individuality, and so the ELO process is not very guided, which is actually great in my opinion, because it helps you manage your time, it helps you be creative, it helps you just sort of come up with stuff on your own, and it's not like an actual class with assignments and guidelines and just like a Google Classroom with assignments you do every day. It's sort of, you have to do it on your own. You have to plan the project on your own. So it really helped me with time management as well, because that's not been a strong suit of mine in the past. And having to make a schedule for myself and having to get at least 60 hours of time booked for the project has been a challenge, but definitely helped me and will help me in the future. And also creativity. While I'm looking for colleges right now, it's great to know what I like and what I want to do in the future. And I've learned, I knew this before I did the project. I knew that I love building things and creating things, but it's been great to know and to sort of concrete that or know that more, because I know that I like hands-on activities and projects, so that'll help me. But also a special thanks to Mr. Pittman. He's been my mentor through this. He's been really helpful with just learning how to use all the tools in the shop and setting me up and helping me find materials. So, seriously, thank you. Any questions?
We have a question from online. The question is, are there many styles and sizes for the wheels on a skateboard? If so, how do you know which ones to choose?
Okay, great. So there are different sizes of skateboards and definitely different styles. I personally just like the traditional skate deck. There are longboards, there are ones with different shaped tails that cater to different styles of skating. But there are the sizes, so the width of the board varies. So this way, if you're looking at it from side to side here, you can get a board that's 8 inches wide, you can get one that's 7.75 inches wide. I personally like a board that's 8.25 inches wide, and so that's the board I'm making. But throughout skating, I've learned which size I like, and that's sort of how I figured out the type of board.
And then also too with the wheels, are the wheels like a standard size, or are there different kinds of? I know like with roller skates, like there are different like soft, like some are more like grippy than others. Like, have you explored any of that yet?
There are different types of wheels. There's like, I don't want to go into like technicalities of skateboarding, but like there's street skating and then there's like skating on ramps and bowls and stuff. So there's different wheels that sort of help with each style. And I mostly street skate, which is just finding spots on like the side of the road in Portland. And so there's a specific type of wheel that I know that I like to use for that. And I already have the trucks that I'm going to attach to this board, so I didn't have to research for that or figure out that.
Thanks.
How do you think the strength of the board you made is compared to the board you bought?
That's, I guess, what I'm going to figure out. What I've seen online is it's a little less durable. Some have snapped that I've seen online that people make, but I'm hoping that it doesn't snap right away at least. Oh yeah. In the past, I've had a lot of fun painting skateboards. So I think I haven't figured that out yet. I'm more focused on actually building it now, but I'll let you know when I figure out the design on a fun one.
So we were talking about trucks a while ago, and this is something that I've been curious about. Maybe you can speak to it, but does it matter which direction I put the trucks on the deck?
Funny. Yeah, so he's referencing a time.
What's funny? I thought that was a serious question.
I think you were referencing a time. So I took the trucks off my board to sort of see how it would fit on the mold, and then put them back on when I was leaving. But one of them was on the wrong way, and I don't know if any of you know how a skateboard like pivots on the truck, but if it's the wrong way, you put the skateboard down, and you go right to the side and you fall down. So I left and figured that out pretty quick, but I came back and fixed it. So to answer your question, it does matter, clearly, but I guess, yeah.
I do have a serious question.
Okay.
So you had mentioned before that you really had no interest in the computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing piece of it. I'm wondering, as you're going through this, trying to get the positive and the negative of the mold to match, has your interest been piqued at all more about the CAD CAM? Maybe you want to explore that more? Or
Yeah, I think not too much. I think it would be interesting to try, but I also think the product that would come out of that would feel as much mine as it would if I did it with the hands-on, right, or with the like doing it myself. So I also think when so the mold I make, this is a really cool part of the project. The mold I make isn't just like a one-time use. I can buy more of these veneers. They're called veneers. It's like thin sheets of wood, and keep making boards. And so once I make one, I can figure out the imperfections of that board, try to fix that, and then just go trial and error until I come up with a board that suits me. So I think it's a lot more interesting to do it by myself.
Thank you.
Your video at the beginning, Hollywood was with your thoughts and emotions, everything's done. Seems like it goes very quickly, but watching you and seeing how much time and
Oh, yeah.
to make them progress. I'm wondering, do you enjoy that or do you find it frustrating?
Stuff like that with me is kind of just I put in music and headphones and just sort of lose track of time. Like I'd be at the certificate shop for 2-3 hours just going and sanding for a while. It would feel like an hour, just like I honestly it's fun to me. But after I have been sanding that mold for a couple weeks now, and it's getting a little bit old. I'm hoping to be done with it soon, but no, it's been a great process.
Got one more.
I'm sorry.
Okay, 2 questions.
Yeah.
What does the final process look like? Once you get the mold squared away and you figure that out, what does that final process look like? And so have you set a timeline that you'd like to take to be done with it?
Great question, actually. So I am hoping to do a test with cardboard before I actually put the wood in next time I go into the certificate shop and see how the mold's actually working. And so I have to find that, and so to press it, you take clamps on either side, which puts a large amount of pressure on either side of the mold, and presses boards in between. And so you do that, and leave it for at least 48 hours, and just to set, and then you take it out, and you can trace or just draw the design of the board you want on there, and then you cut it out with the bandsaw that was in the video, and then sand down the sides, cut the holes for the trucks to screw in, and then just sort of just sand down the top, and you're kind of done. But I have not made a timeline for it. I'm hoping I can get it done before school's over. I think I can, because the end of the process doesn't seem like it'll be super time consuming. But yeah, I think in the next couple of weeks that'll be done.
Just a quick question. Was skateboarding big in Europe in general? I'm just curious. It's so
honestly, it's similar to, well, it's actually a bit bigger than in France because in any town that I go to or take the bus to, there'd be a skate park somewhere, or in most towns, the bigger ones usually, but they were usually packed, like a lot of people going, see a lot of people skating on the street, which is surprising because half the streets are just cobblestone, you can't really skate on there. But it was, yeah, definitely a big part of the culture.
Next, Maya Fernandez will be presenting, and she'll be talking about her investigation into careers in the medical field.
Hi, I'm Maya, and I'm in my ELO So in this presentation, I'm going to be going through my initial goals, initial thoughts and perceptions, my approach, challenges, the impact of COVID-19 on my project, what I learned, and reflection. The initial goal of my project was to get more insight into the lifestyle of becoming a doctor, learn the specifics of what a day in the life of each doctor would be like, compare different types of doctors, and explore test limits of my interests in some background about my interest is that my mom is a doctor and she suggested that I volunteer at the hospital she works at to get service hours because that's a requirement. And then I became interested in medicine after volunteering there and just falling in love with the environment. My initial thoughts before doing this project and perceptions were that all doctors are consumed with their work all the time, and medical school is insanely hard and basically impossible, and you don't have much of a life while going through it. My approach into investigating was I picked different doctors that I was interested in with the help of Miss Carlisle. We picked some doctors through a database that is used for CP. And then I made a list of interview questions that I was curious about. I reached out to them to set up interviews. And I also researched their careers before meeting with them just to get some background and go into more specific questions that I had. And then after each interview, I did a reflection on how I felt after learning the information. And then I also took different healthcare career surveys that I have. Some challenges I faced was scheduling interviews with the doctors. A lot of them are very busy, and junior year is obviously very busy, so that was hard kind of navigating. Also staying motivated and self-driven through the whole process. I found that making weekly schedules helped me a lot, which I think can translate to college later, which was good. And then reaching out and having to do an interview with people I didn't know was very intimidating to me, but everyone ended up being really nice, and I'm really grateful for that. The impact of COVID-19 on my project, all interviews were virtual, which was definitely good because this made it easier to schedule and meet with people, but it would have been nice to be in person. I was able to do video lessons and Zoom calls on what it was like to be a doctor and how to get there. There were the pipeline project through Tufts. They set up a Zoom call that I joined. That was also through the school, and that was very interesting. And also, I did some reading sessions from a program in New Hampshire that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. One of the downsides was I couldn't shadow any doctors, which is kind of a bummer because of COVID. But I ended up finding YouTube videos on a day in the life of different doctors, which was really interesting. These are the different doctors I interviewed. I interviewed an ER doctor, an anesthesiologist,
about their experience in medical school. And some things I learned was that it usually isn't that bad because this is something you're passionate about and interested in doing. And the work isn't necessarily harder than the work that they faced in the past. It's just never ending, kind of constantly hard. And there are clubs in medical school, which I didn't know about. And the test that determines which residency you get in is now pass or fail. And so this makes extracurriculars more important. I interviewed a first-year medical student, and that's how I found that information. And then you can have any major to get in medical school. I learned this from the video sessions I did. There were people who had religion majors and dance majors, and they still got into medical school. And then in my interview with anesthesiology, I learned that it's not slow paced, and a lot goes into what each needs, and everyone is different. I kind of thought that it was a very low-key job, and there wasn't much to it. There's actually a lot that is behind, and there's a lot of patient interaction and care. After my interviews with the OB/GYN, I learned that they actually work all the time because they're on call a lot because they never know when having might come. And there's a lot of different aspects into the job environment and responsibilities. They have to do a lot of education and work in surgery and in the office a lot. And I thought this wasn't really for me because of the hours and the lifestyle I had. When I interviewed a urologist, I learned that they spend a lot of time in the office and in surgery, which I thought was interesting. And the doctor I interviewed actually did an 8-year program, and it's when you apply as a high schooler and you get accepted to that school's undergraduate medical school. And then the ER doctor, which was my favorite, and I liked it because you never know what to expect, and the pace is always changing. There's lots of teamwork with nurses and doctors, and you need to know a little bit about everything, which I thought was very cool. And then you also work in shifts and don't bring a lot of work home. The reflection, something that I thought this project was very successful and it solidified my interest in becoming a doctor. I made a lot of connections with very nice and successful doctors that said I could reach out to them anytime if I had any questions. And I cleared up not a lot of difficult negative misconceptions I had about being a doctor. And I learned a lot of different pathways to becoming a doctor. And that it isn't all just one specific straightforward path. I kind of just did any type of doctor. In all doctors go to medical school and then you specify whether you want to be a surgeon or practitioner. So that's where it differs.
Do you have a preference if you want to be a practitioner or you
I like to be an ER doctor.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between like the surgeons and the doctors in the ER? If
Um,
they're responding.
The ER doctor handles like the patients that immediately come in and they treat them and then they send them to like surgery. Surgeons will work on them and or like a specialist. They did. They said that they did have to make a lot of like adjustments because it is a lot of work. But they found that you just have to manage your time well.
Any of the doctors talk about
we did go into it a little bit, and most of them, it didn't affect them that much. It was just less patients, just the necessary patients that they had to see.
Except for, I imagine in your class, they talked about what the emergency room.
I think that they had a special department for COVID, so they would just send those patients over there. So they just handle patients.
Why did COVID make you think twice about wanting to be in the medical field?
I don't think so. I didn't really think of it that way.
Question is, did you reach out to any surgeons or interventional radiology or cardiology? I don't know what interventional radiology is. Any interest in those fields?
I did watch a video on radiology, and I decided from watching that I wanted more patient interaction. Interacting with people, I enjoy that a lot. And I tried to reach out to surgeons, but they didn't get back to me. They were really busy.
I would like to say I was kind of surprised at the information you shared from the anesthesiologist, because I think there is this like stereotype of them that they're like cold, they don't have bedside manners, and they're just like all business, you know. So that was a really nice kind of way to like break up that stereotype that I think people have about that field.
I'm not sure, but it seemed, based on the pipeline at Tufts, it seemed 50-50. That students that were left, I don't know for sure the statistics.
One more question from online. Is there any particular type of medicine that is facing a shortage of doctors nationwide or in Maine?
I know that Maine definitely struggles to find doctors. I'm not sure specifically what type of doctors, but I think that's what the pipeline program in Tufts was trying to do, was educate students in Maine to go into the medical field and hopefully come back to Maine and help here.
So Marlon Davis will be presenting next, and he is going to talk about his struggles of making a video teaching math.
I'm not only going to be talking about the struggles, just my I know we had to fill out a Google form, and I did not know it was going to be on this that you guys would all be reading. And I used Canva because I'm fancy. Okay, so for introduction, I'm Milo Weavis. I'm a junior at Yarmouth High School, and for my ELO, I made a video teaching Algebra 1, specifically functions. So my project, I did kind of a deep dive into functions. If you guys remember y equals mx plus b, it's that concept, just linear algebra. And the video came out very professional, a lot more than I initially thought it would. That's thanks to my parents who run a production company, Jake's Productions. they're awesome. So I had a lot of camera equipment that I could use. And I really wanted to capture the essence of the subject through a lot of different resources, like an Algebra 1 textbook that I read extensively, and other stuff that you'll hear about later. During the practice presentation, I got the question why I wanted to do this for my ELO, because it doesn't seem like a very standard thing that a high schooler would do for an independent study. But I have always had a really true love of mathematics, and I just started tutoring a student recently, and as I look into my future and what line of work I want to pursue, teaching has always been something that stood out to me. And in the back of my head, I've always had this thought, like, well, why don't I make YouTube videos and kind of combine a creative aspect with my love for teaching into one and make a video. That's me in my room on my blackboard explaining variables. That's just a screenshot from the video. That's also me in my backyard. The goals of this presentation were to get more practice teaching, especially to a camera, which if you've ever talked to a camera with no person around, like nobody around, it's really weird because there's no emotion to look at, you're just talking to a black square pretty much. And it's honestly made me realize how awesome our teachers are during COVID, because I have no idea how they teach to a Google Classroom meeting full of blank screens. It amazes me. I also wanted to learn the process of film production. That's also, again, where my parents came in very handy because they're the experts. And throughout this entire project, I kind of learned from the idea of a video to the end goal of it and actually having a video, what kind of happens in between. And as cheesy as it sounds, I really wanted to have fun and not have to dread every week, having to find time instead of using the study. I'll go out and hang out with my friends. I would have to stay in my room and write a script or, try to film or pick up camera equipment. And I think I achieved that goal somewhat of having fun. My parents have definitely seen me be very ecstatic about this project and very not so ecstatic about it. But overall, I did really enjoy it. The resources I used, that is Mr. Gross, who is a Algebra 1 teacher at the middle school who kind of helped me develop a love for math when I was in middle school. He works at the HMS. And he was my mentor during this project. I met with him pretty frequently, a lot, especially in the beginning of the project, trying to figure out what subject I really wanted to do a deep dive in and to teach. Another resource was my parents. They were a big help. I had a bunch of meetings with them throughout the course of the past 4 months. They were very, very helpful. I also read a solid 100 pages of an Algebra 1 textbook in my bed, just because I wanted to really understand how the textbook taught functions and get a really good grasp on it before I started script writing. So a lot of the beginning of this project was literally just rereading pages in an Algebra 1 textbook that I got from the high school. And yeah, that was a really, really valuable resource. The last one was watching YouTube videos like Vsauce and Veritasium. If you guys have heard of those channels, they do these kind of deep dives into science or mathematical related topics, and make their videos are very professional. And so analyzing their videos and how they, introduce a topic and how they're filming and how the production looks in the end, that was really, really helpful. So this is a picture that my dad took. Candidly, I look very professional in that picture. I was not very professional. I think I'm trying to figure out how to hit the record button. But the process of my filmmaking was this is how it looked chronologically. Figuring out the subject took a solid 2-3 weeks probably of having meetings with Mr. Gross, trying to see what I enjoy the most and what I think I have a good enough grasp on to about it. And then I went into script writing. I wrote about a 4-page script where I not only, wrote what I was going to say, but also where our shop was going to be, what was going to be happening, whether it was shooting in my backyard or in a car or whatever. That took a while too before I could even start filming. And then, filming, a lot of it was very time consuming and hard to find time to film because, as my dad pointed out on my first day of filming, when we were filming outside, you kind of have to do an entire section of it in one day, in one take, or else the lighting will be different or the chair positioning will be different and it'll look really goofy. So that was, I learned a lot. And then the last part was just editing it all together with some help from my mom, but definitely not enough help from my mom. I should have asked her for more help. Editing was really hard. The struggles I had. The only struggle I had due to COVID was picking up camera equipment. I had to drive to Portland and then to Durham to pick up a camera or a microphone. And then it was just really time consuming and it took a lot out of me to be driving for probably 10 hours or 15 hours throughout the whole project, dropping it off and picking it up. But other than that, scheduling was probably my biggest challenge. And about a month and a half ago, I sat down with my mom and she gave me an hour and a half long lesson on how to budget my time. Because at the end of my junior year, I had tests coming up and I worked and I was tutoring a kid and it was just really stressful. So that's my Google Calendar all organized, which is awesome. Thank you, Mom. Learning the subject was also really hard. Again, it was just hours upon hours of reading a book or watching YouTube videos on how I could approach teaching it in a way that wasn't very kind of like cookie cutter and how you learn it in a school. I kind of wanted to take the subject and bring it into the real world and not have it just be on a blackboard. And then editing, that's my iMovie project. That's just a screenshot. It's just showing how many clips there were. I definitely took for granted how long editing would take, and I kind of was just like, oh man, it's just gonna be stitching clips together. And I remember talking to Miss Barr about halfway or maybe a month ago and being like, man, editing is not easy. This is really, really time consuming. So I definitely, if I could have a do-over, I would give myself a bit more time to edit the whole video. The outcome of my video was a almost finished 20-minute long video, which I'm actually pretty proud of. I learned a lot about teaching, especially teaching to a camera, which isn't something, again, that feels natural. It is really, really weird. And then understanding the actual production of film and how documentaries or videos in general are made, and kind of having a newfound appreciation, not only for my parents' line of work, but also for movie production, because I had no idea how they do it. It's insane. This was hard enough. Moving forward, I definitely want to keep making videos. Maybe not as professional or as clean cut as this video was. I'm going to show you guys a clip in a second, but you can see it's very, it looks a lot more professional than just a Khan Academy style video where people are just writing equations in math and teaching just the math. So I kind of want to veer towards more of that style of video, especially for students that I'm tutoring in the future or the one that I'm tutoring now to use as a homework type thing. I want to have more practice tutoring and teaching in general. And I think the stuff that I learned throughout the ELO has definitely secured a foundation and given me the knowledge that I like to do this and that it is fun. And then I also do want to explore film production more, whether that means just making more videos on my own or maybe sitting with my parents more and learning more about that. I think really cool. So I'm gonna show you guys the introduction of my video. I put it on YouTube and this is this.
What if I told you you could calculate the distance to Pluto and all you had to do was bake a couple of cookies for your friends?
Well, today I want to teach you about expressions and equations and what's the difference between them. I want to teach you about how to use the alphabet in math and a special thing called functions. Okay, we are back. And that's all I'm going to show you guys. You have seen enough. So I was initially planning to put this video on YouTube for people to watch, and someone that I'm tutoring to watch if I am tutoring someone in the future who's learning algebra. I've decided not to do this because it's not, it didn't really come out the way I wanted it to, but it also didn't, a lot more of the focus was on the actual film production rather than the mathematic part of it. Like, as you saw, I didn't show you any of what I was writing on my blackboard teaching the actual math because have found that I'm a lot more interested in actually producing that kind of stuff rather than like these really high quality videos teaching math. I think it's a lot easier to teach math on a whiteboard, sadly enough, because I was kind of trying to disprove that. But what you gonna do? And so, yeah, that was my presentation. Yep. Yes, Dad.
So that doesn't make you be a math teacher or
I think that I don't know. I don't know. I liked the teaching part of it a lot, and I liked the video production part of it a lot. But I think that honestly, what I've learned is that if I'm gonna make a video, I think that I at least will be better at keeping them separate instead of combining them. But the film production part I really enjoyed, and that was something I didn't know I really enjoyed up until this project. I kind of have always known I like teaching math, but Imogen, yes.
Are you gonna put the video anywhere for us to see?
I will show it to you guys for sure.
What about that?
If I need to do a couple more voiceovers, and when I do, yeah, I'll post it on YouTube, and you guys can try to find it. Yeah.
So, my understanding is when you went into this, you felt like you had to entertain, educate, but you're coming out of it thinking that you don't need to entertain. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I went into this having watched a lot of the YouTubers who I had previously mentioned, Vsauce and Veritasium. They made these really nice style videos where all of it is very professionally made and they educate within them. But I think that, at least for me, is not the style that I want to pursue if I'm making more videos. I think that I do a lot better at teaching if it's just me with another student or me just writing. As for the video production, I think just that part's, if that answers. Yes.
So first of all, a comment from Ms. Harrington online. She wrote, "Are you trying to charm us, Milo, when you were talking about teachers and how awesome teachers are?" And said you should get an A+ for complimenting not only teachers in general, but also your mom. And I would have to say yes to that. But her question was similar to teach the math on the screen. Is there value in having strong video production and teaching in a teaching video in general? Why or why not?
Yes, I think that if you can use very clean cut and strong video production to your benefit, it can be really helpful. For example, in my case, I didn't really accomplish this because I almost kept them too separate. I had a lot of very clean cut video and editing, like you just saw with the montage of me giving my friends cookies. but then completely transitioned that into just me on a Blackboard teaching. And I think that I could have made 2 separate videos, honestly. Like, I didn't combine them very fluidly or frictionlessly. And I think that if you have the skill to do that, and if you have a lot more experience than I do, you can use it to your benefit for sure. And I think the proof of that is the fact that Vsauce has like 13 million subscribers on YouTube, and his videos get a lot of views. So I think there are pros and cons to making a video very professional and educational, but I think if you do it right, you can for sure pull it off.
One more question. So the editing process, as you've mentioned, is very involved. Do you think it's fun, tedious, or maybe a little bit of both?
More tedious than fun, in my experience. It was a lot of like, yeah, it was really tedious. It was really, really tedious. Again, I don't know how my mom does it. That's her, like, part of their production company, at least, is a lot of editing, as well as other stuff. She specializes in editing, and I don't know how. It frankly bored me a lot, because it's a lot of just stitching videos together in a way that, looks good. Although I will say it is very, very rewarding to take film that is not edited at all. It's just a bunch of raw clips and make it into something that is clean. That part is very rewarding, but all in all, I didn't really like it.
Next, Jocelyn Ruffner will be presenting, and she's going to talk to us about her exploration of ethics.
Hello. Wait, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay, sweet. Wait, can I turn it up? Alright, I'm Jocelyn Ruffner. I'm a sophomore, and like Milo, I had no idea the little form thing I was submitting was going to go in that program. So I think it just says that, like, I made a slideshow, which I did, but also didn't want to know. So, my exploration of ethics. So, before I move forward, what I'm going to be talking about is why ethics, what my YOLO was like, what did I learn, and the thank you. So, first of all, what's my project? But before that, even more before that, ethics is kind of a broad subject, so what is it really? So ethics, also known as moral philosophy, is the branch of philosophy that, I'm quoting this from something I have no idea what, and that involves systemizing, defending, and recommending concepts of right and wrong behavior. Essentially, it's just a study of what's right and wrong and where does an individual fit into that. So why did I want to learn? Before I started this exploration, I don't know anything about ethics as an intellectual pursuit. Instead, I only understood it to the extent that I saw it. While I had always been curious about it and what the right and wrong thing to do was, I never had the vocabulary necessary to describe or understand moral phenomena. This didn't really feel like a huge problem, though I was vaguely interested, until I started to debate with my grandfather. In talking with him, it became apparent that while I had a vague idea about morality, if I couldn't explain and argue these ideas, they were essentially obsolete. In a field like philosophy, intuitions generally need to be challenged and strengthened or challenged and discarded. And at the moment, I wasn't able to do either. So I found myself wanting to know more. And my grandfather gave me some literature to read. And when I was reading them, I discovered I couldn't understand any of it. And that I had so many questions that I wanted to ask them also because my philosophy, I'm here to that. So what was my YOLO like? reached out to Professor Lawrence Simon at Bowdoin College. He's a friend of my grandfather's and he teaches philosophy. So he and I exchanged emails and decided to meet every Monday through Google Meet to discuss the chapters I read. James Rachel's textbook, The Elements of Moral Philosophy. Essentially, it was like a one-on-one class in which we discussed the chapters, my thoughts, and the various arguments in such chapters. We didn't start with any particular goal. It was basically me reading and trying to understand, and then we were going to discuss. It's not like I didn't produce anything, really. So, what worked well? Well, first of all, I was really nervous at the start because Professor Simon told me he wasn't terribly interested, I'm quoting this, he wasn't terribly interested in what I thought until I understood the material. And this is a perfectly acceptable sentiment, except he was a professor at Bowdoin and I knew absolutely nothing. And I was prepared to be a complete fraud who sat there for an hour and just spewed something out. Like, I don't even know. Surprisingly, finding things to talk about was not one of the issues, but instead the opposite was true. We talked in circles so many times that frankly we still haven't gotten far in the book. All I really had to do was read and come with a basic understanding of questions and then talk. And this was really good for a verbal processor, but it also was kind of a downfall, as I never really had to do more than just listen and learn. There were no required notes to refer back to. This made my blog much harder than it could have been and overall attention harder. However, since another plus side is that we were meeting online, so we didn't have to worry about our respective schedules or COVID. And also, because of COVID, we were both used to the software and it made meeting a lot easier. So what did I actually learn? First of all, I learned that I work well with a bit more structure. I really enjoyed the independence of the ELO, but I wasn't really forced to be engaged for more than one day a week, and this made like what I was learning, like this made me feel disconnected from what I was learning. Like I wasn't really understanding the material as much as I could. Of course, I could have just done more on my own, but what I think I've learned is that if I'm going to do an independent study, I'm not likely to force myself to do more than I have to. This semester, I also took an online class, and I found that the independent program suited me better. I had lots of work to do, but I could engage with that on my own time. In relation to this, I also learned for me to have meaningful takeaways, I need to engage with in a manner that asks for attention. Not like tests, I don't like tests, and I prefer to not have them. But for material to ask me to interpret past lessons and present lessons, which, of course, this material did, but because it was disorganized, I feel like I was missing out from education. This was in no way any fault of Professor Simon, but the fault of both of our lack of knowledge of what style of teaching would suit me best, and the fact that I didn't go into super prepared for like the level of independent learning I would have to do. Despite all I've said and how it might sound discouraging, I feel anything but disheartened. Instead, I find myself interested in the discourse I've had so far, however unorganized it is. I feel like I've been exposed to enough ethics to understand how complicated it is, but I've only begun to understand that complexity. I look forward to further education in moral philosophy. I'm grateful I've had this first opportunity. Besides the understanding for myself and how I learn, I also learned about ethics. And I think I should preface that I can't possibly sum up what I've learned, as I'm still trying to make sense of it myself. Despite only getting through a portion of the book, our discussions span a great amount in terms of content and depth. We began our study by asking the very small question of what is morality and what place it has in our society, to which neither experts nor I have a definite answer. In this discussion, we mostly talked about meta-ethical ideas, such as cultural relativism, subjectivism, the role of religion, and psychological egoism. We then moved on to some normative ethical theories, which are theories concerned with how one ought to act, which is opposed to meta-ethics, which is concerned with the nature of ethics, like the language people use in what role it has and blah, blah, blah. It's not, okay, not blah, blah, blah. It was very interesting. We touched on ethical egoism, but spent much of our time in the realm of normative ethics talking about utilitarianism, as has greatly shaped our societies and their ideas of justice, economies, and morality. Also, my voice is dying. Now I'm going to cough. No, I'm not. I'm just going to check. Neither. Okay. hard to go into detail about the topics when the only person I've talked to about them is someone with a great extent of knowledge, who knows more than me, don't understand what I'm trying to say. Even when I understand. Also, my voice is dying. Sorry. Anyway, what I think I was saying is that I am not an expert in understanding this stuff or in talking about it. So instead, I want to focus on my everyday actions and how they have changed because of this course. In our discussion of utilitarianism, the theory that says action that maximizes happiness is right action. We also discussed whose happiness exactly should be prioritized. After all, what brings one person happiness might be another person's unhappiness. Which again, like, there's no concrete answer to any of that stuff. I just don't understand it. And what gives someone moral standing? Utilitarianism, with the guidance of contemporary philosopher Peter Singer, dictates that animals have moral standing as they feel pain. This is an oversimplification that made me reassess my complicity in harming and commodifying animals when they eat meat. This, in turn, led me to research about modern consumers' disconnect from production of food and other commodities, which in turn led me to research about the ethics of ignorance, and this in turn led me to an essay for school about narratives of democracy and freedom in America and how these perpetuate oppression. This is a very convoluted example, but I feel it highlights what this course has taught me and how it's changed the way I look at the world. While I may not be an expert on moral phenomena and right or wrong, I'm certainly more aware of the way in which ethics is a part of everything one does. After all, the state of ethics is concerned with actions, and you can't do anything without taking action. I think as everyone is a decision maker, everyone would benefit from studying moral philosophy, whatever mode they feel most comfortable. Personally, I feel very grateful that I was able to have such great one-on-one conversations with Professor Simon. I don't know if he's online, but hi. And I was able to ask so many good questions and have so many good answers. I hope I can continue to learn and see what direction the study of ethics takes me in. So, thank you, and some specific thank yous to my grandmother, Ms. Carlisle, and Ms. Tripp, for helping me establish my ELO and explore. Thank you to Professor Simon for answering my many questions and being my mentor. And thank you to you guys for listening to this. And so, questions. Also, I can't see, so if you're raising your hand, I have no idea.
I have an observation. So, you think this often does, about questions, right? There's no specific answer, it's not very concrete topic. And then it sounded like a little bit of your struggle with your ELO, concrete with something you're still on the front and that's because of it. And just I thought it was really interesting that it seems like that structure you need very broad topics that you need to be able to one question that
Yeah, I was noticing that as I watched everybody else's presentations, which were awesome, by the way. Good job to everybody. But a lot of people had really specific things they were interested in, and they oriented their project around that. Whereas no specificity. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just wanted to learn about it. Yarmouth doesn't offer philosophy, and I knew that if I was going to learn about it, I would want to be able to ask a million questions. So I think in that regard, this was the best option for me. But I also think if I'd gone into this with like more understanding of the topic in general, and more understanding of what specifically I wanted to talk about, it would have been a bit more concrete, as I said. Again, if there's any other questions, I have no idea. So,
Jocelyn, maybe an observation or a question. Perhaps now that you have a better kind of like baseline knowledge, like if you went forward with this, you would have more concrete questions because you have more of like a basic, like some of the vocabulary, like and then you did have questions along the way. I noticed that because you started off here, and then the rabbit hole of research led you to this thing, which led you to this thing that you had questions about. So I think you did have lots of questions and concrete things but they just kind of came like a little spiral a little bit, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, one thing about this project is that I feel it's really changed, and I was looking forward to this, it's changed the way I think and look at the world, because basically everything is contested. Every time you make like an observation observation or a declaration. It's like, well, is that really true? And obviously, nobody has an answer to that. So I think, I don't know if this is what you're talking about at all, but I feel like throughout this process, I've been able to, I've learned almost which questions to ask, if that makes sense, and that's been really fun for me.
I do have a question from online now, from Ms.
wonderful.
Harrington. What kinds of retention practices work best for your learning? Are there any that you could self-implement in future unstructured learning situations?
Yeah, I think that was also another interesting part of this because I think I put in the work towards reading and doing some of my own research, but I didn't put in the work towards retention. Because usually I'm in a classroom where there's teachers who just do that for you to come up with assignments. And as I said, I don't think tests are the best way because for me, normally I just memorize everything and then instantly forget it. So I kind of touched on this, but it might have been a bit confusing. But I think, and this would have been awful, which is why I didn't suggest it to Professor Simon. But if he had like asked me questions where I was not allowed to look at anything, and I had to just like, and I had to interpret things from the textbook instead of just saying what I learned or what my intuitions were, questions I had about it. Like, yeah, like he did do this. Like he asked me questions, but I never had to like fully understand anything. That's okay because I was just beginning to learn all this, but I feel like if there had been almost more concrete assignments in which she was like, okay, I'm gonna ask you these questions, and I knew my answer was gonna be graded, I might have tried to understand it more, but also I think that's why this works so well, because I knew I could go in not fully understanding everything and just ask questions. I don't know what would have been best.
Do you have a lot of debate in your family? Like,
My parents are lawyers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talk and discuss morality and philosophy a lot. And you think that played a role in your curiosity about it?
A little bit. Again, both my parents are lawyers, and I have 4 older siblings, and we all argue a lot. So partially, yes, but also it's more just that I noticed, and feels like philosophy. It seems like there's lots of logic involved, and so you not only need to understand logic, you need to understand what questions to ask, and so that was like a big part for me. The fact that I didn't know which questions to ask and how to tell like what was wrong with a statement or something like that. That was a big driving force. And I think part of it was probably that like my siblings always went off me and I wanted to know how to undermine them, but not really, yeah.
Also, this must have been a fascinating time culturally to be studying morality.
Well, yeah, to be honest, I didn't look specifically at a lot of the way morality is discussed in mainstream media and like topics about morality with things going on today because I think I touched on this, that my understanding of morality was basically from media and like people saying this is immoral or this is clearly wrong. And I feel like that kind of like I had to really discard that when I came into this because the way it's talked about in media and the way it's talked about in intellectual stuff are very different. And this is complex because then there's people who think of the way people talk about it in media is the way morality really is. And there's other like professionals who think no, just because that does happen doesn't mean you're going off the topic. But basically, I don't even know what you asked me.
Just an interesting time to be
talking
about.
And I think I was saying is that I purposely didn't focus on a lot of like the way things were being done in the media and like how people were discussing morality. All right. Everyone else?
We're going to just take a very short intermission break so we can get up and stretch their legs. And there's another group of students coming in for the second session, but we will start with Mariam.
Thank you so much for.
See ya.
I'm at 60%.
What, you want this?
I'm at 60%.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
Because I restart my computer regularly.
Pardon me?
I restart my computer regularly.
welcome to all of you who just arrived for our second session of our ELO presentations. If you're not familiar with our ELO program, it's essentially these are student-driven independent studies. Each of the students spend 60 hours throughout the semester working on their project. And they vary in topics from we just watched a student talk about her exploration of ethics to we have one coming up soon on mastering decorating cakes. So our first presentation tonight is going to be by Miriam Gaguchadze. All right. She's going to be talking about investigating socioeconomic factors that drive currency.
Hi everyone, my name is Miriam and I'm a junior here at Yarmouth High School, and the title of my project is How the World Determines the Price of Money. So here's a little roadmap of today's slideshow. I'll be talking about what I initially wanted to learn versus what I ended up focusing on, how I approach my project, what resources I use, challenges, and how COVID-19 impacted me, and my final learnings and course thank yous. So, before I start talking about what I wanted to learn about, I want to talk about how I became interested in this topic because it's like really random. I was on YouTube one day and some guy popped up in like my recommended, and it was this like 22-year-old kid, guy that had a career, and he made money by investing like money into the foreign exchange market, which is basically a market where you trade like currencies against each other. So at the beginning of my project, I met with Mrs. Barr, and I started off with like a really, really broad question. I just wanted to learn more about forex and like how the market worked and if you can actually like make money off of it, because this guy was talking about how he was like such a big like millionaire and he like didn't really do much except like trade this kind of stuff. But then after like continuing like learning about it and whatnot, I realized that I kind of had to like scale my project down a little bit because it was way too broad of a topic. And so instead I focused on researching a pretty foundational like aspect of forex, which is like investigating how money fluctuates up and down. So that is what I ended up focusing on in the last couple of weeks of my project. My approach involved a lot of Google and a lot of reading because the foreign exchange market is not something that is like super widely covered, especially not in a way that is like very consumable for like high schoolers. It was kind of difficult to research because it was a lot of reading. These are some of the resources that I used, and undoubtedly like Khan Academy was a lifesaver because it did a really good job of taking pretty like difficult concepts and like simplifying them in a way that like a high schooler could understand. But it was limiting because it didn't have a lot of articles and videos that talked about like the foreign exchange market. So I had to turn to things like Investopedia, which was kind of like Khan Academy, but it was like more focused on like the whole topic of like economy and stuff. So that was really helpful. And then I did this free online like course called Baby Pips that took you like step by step through like what is the foreign exchange market, like how do you trade it, and if you can actually make money off of it. Challenges in COVID-19. So because this is something I already said before, but because it's not something that was or is like talked about a lot, it like involved a lot of reading, and that kind of made learning about it pretty difficult because I'm someone that is like very much a hands-on learner, so just reading over and over and over again can be like a little bit repetitive, and sometimes I felt like I was just reading and information was just going in one ear and like out the other. Another thing was that I was wicked busy this semester. I thought that I would have extra time for some reason, but on top of my ELO, I had a pretty packed schedule with like 4 AP classes, and I was taking another online course through Winnie, and I was doing extracurriculars and sports. So it kind of made like juggling the project difficult because I needed to like find time to work on it. And then another thing was that because I started off so broad on purpose, it kind of took me a while to find like a more in-depth focus question, which kind of blows because my last couple of weeks working on this project about like, oh, what determines like the value of money and like what makes it go up and down, I didn't get to spend too much time on it. But I will say, this is something I can mention in the first section of the sessions of the ELO we had. COVID-19 actually did not like impact my project in a bad way. If anything, it made online meetings really convenient. I was able to connect with people that I don't think I would have normally been able to because I was able to meet with them online. So I think COVID-19 actually helped my project, oddly enough. I'm sure I would have been able to like meet with these people regardless, but it would have been a little bit more difficult if I had not. So my final learnings and reflection. So throughout my time, I met a lot with Mr. Pearl, and I was telling him about how I was getting pretty overwhelmed with like the amount of information that I was learning, and I like was kind of getting discouraged. But he like said something to me during one of our meetings, which I have included over here, which like made me realize that it's okay that I'm not like processing, I guess, like a lot of information, because like the more I know about this topic, the more I realize I don't know, because it is such a big topic and it's like not that talked about that often. So for my actual learnings, I will talk about these pretty briefly because it's kind of like difficult to like go into depth if you don't know like a lot of preliminary like background information. But basically from my first like half of the project, when I focused on like this big question of like what is the foreign exchange market, like how does it work, I kind of like did things like compare it to the stock market, and I found like differences between the two markets. And the biggest thing was that in the foreign exchange market, you're trading currencies against each other, whereas in the stock market, you're trading shares of a company. And another big thing was that the foreign exchange market is something called over-the-counter trading or off-exchange trading, which basically just means that it happens directly between two parties, whereas something like the stock market trades on exchange. I also learned about like the very, very, very basics of how to trade it. So I like looked into trading pairs and how people like measure how much a currency goes up and down, like the lingo that kind of goes along with it. They use something called a PIP, which stands for percentage in point or price interest point, to measure how much a currency has gone up or down, which if I remember correctly, it's like 0.0001 of a penny. And so that led me to like thinking, okay, how can you make money off of trading something so small? And that's like when I got into reading about margin trading and like utilizing leverage, which just basically means how you can like open an account with, let's say, $50, but trade with amount of money larger than that. I then decided that I would take a step back from like this big broad question and focus on my more narrowed down question. And the big question that I was able to focus on was what influences like the actual value of money. And the like very oversimplified answer to this is supply and demand. So I had to start looking into, okay, what drives demand? And there's a lot of things, as you can imagine, that drives demand for money in a country. But the big things were like GDP, gross domestic product of a country.
goods you're producing and if people want those goods across the country. And then another thing was interest rates that national banks set, and if people like want higher interest rates, they are more likely to convert their money into that currency to get that interest rate. Okay, so my final reflection, how did I like it? I liked learning this way. It was kind of like really different to approach a project like this without like a set curriculum, and it was nice to have so much freedom, but I kind of felt like I was going a little crazy because there are no boundaries, and so I went down a lot of rabbit holes, which kind of felt discouraging at times because I felt like I was going away from the main point of my project, and every time I tried to go back to my original question, it just like seemed kind of difficult to tackle. And if I had to do it again, I would have probably started with something just a little bit smaller. And if not start something smaller, I would just maybe narrow it down a little bit quicker, because the smaller question that I was focusing on made a lot more sense than the big question that I had focused on. Thank you to Ms. Barr for meeting with me. I know like I had a really weird schedule, and at some like odd times I reschedule a lot, but Ms. Barr has been really, really flexible and has like offered me great help through all of this. Mr. Pearl, my like great mentor, who gave me a lot of advice throughout this project and has like encouraged me and like made me really, really excited about finishing all of this. He also connected me to one of his friends, Mr. Moore, who I was also able to meet with, and he actually was the one that helped me narrow down my project. So big shout out to those two. And Mrs. Carlisle for meeting with me at the very, very beginning and the very, very end, and helping me square away my ELO and finalize it. So, take questions now.
I have a question. Does cryptocurrency affect foreign exchange at all? Like, is there any overlap there? I'm just curious, because cryptocurrency has been doing some crazy stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was actually starting to get into that part of my research, and the short answer to that is yes, it does, because all currencies like have an effect on each other, but I would not be able to give you the exact details as to why, just because I did not get too heavy into that part of my research.
Oh, there's a question.
I thought I would be. I didn't really know what it was about, which is why I wanted to do it alone, and I just like wanted to learn more about it in general. But after researching it, I think that I'm almost set. This was enough. So.
I think there was a question over here.
I just wondered after studying this, if you were looking to make an investment, would you want to invest?
The way that you make money in the foreign exchange market is by actually actively trading currencies. So if I wanted to like make an investment into this, I would actually have to like sit down and like make like trades and like watch how the graphs move up and down and know when to buy and know when to sell. So no.
Did you track any events that had a big impact on the market as you were studying them?
Let me think. That was in the beginning of actually the presidential election did have some impact on the economy, the American economy, but I can't
Winnie, Leahy, and Abby Hill, who are going to talk about their ELO cake decorating.
Alright, so my name is Abby Hill. And I'm Winnie Leahy. And for our ELO, we went into the art of cake decorating. Alright, so for introduction, we started off with kind of a little bit of inspiration just from kind of cakes that we had been making previously before we even started this ELO. Winnie and I love to bake together. It's something that like really is super fun for us, and we found that we've had some time on our hands and we wanted to just kind of take some time and make it feel welcome to it.
We will also, throughout this presentation, we will talk about our learning goal and why we started this whole project, and wanted to turn it into an ELO rather than just a hobby. And our approach to this project, how we decided to just build our own class, how we wanted to structure that. We'll also talk about some challenges we faced, especially with COVID-related challenges. And then finally, we will share what we learned from this experience and what we would do differently if we were to do it again.
Alright, so for inspiration and goals, so like I said before, Winnie and I have been baking cakes for a while, and these were some of the first cakes we made together. You can't help but try to make each other. Obviously, you know, those cakes, they're quite something, and I'm happy to say that I think we got a little bit better as we started moving on. But this was kind of just like our inspiration. For our goals, we overall just kind of really wanted to master the art of cake decorating, and we wanted to test like different ways to frost cakes, different ways to decorate cakes. And we know that there's a lot of different tips and like styles and stuff you can do.
We were hoping, one of our goals was to spend a lot of time on Pinterest and look at some of the styles of cakes there, and we wanted to learn more about the styles through that by creating copycat cakes, which is basically when we find a cake and we find a tutorial on how to make that cake, and we then just replicate completely. That's actually much harder to do than it sounds, so we thought that would be a big part of our project this semester.
Alright, so for some of our approaches and challenges, basically our original hopes for this project were that we wanted to be able to discover the techniques to make a good cake. We wanted to discover how to work with like a difficult canvas sort of and a non-traditional paint, because if you think about it, decorating cake is kind of like art. And we wanted to learn kind of what the significance and the function of each tool is in the cake decorating process. There's definitely a lot of tools that you like to consider. And
so our approach to this project was originally to meet up about 2 to 3 times a month to bake, decorate, dedicate full afternoons, block out our schedules, and just focus on making these cakes. We wanted to try all different types of cakes, as I said before. We wanted to try copycat. We wanted to incorporate some with just some cakes that were completely creative freedom. And we kind of faced some challenges with that. I would say probably the first challenge we faced was that no one can eat cake 2 to 3 times. As great as it is, when you have an entire cake and 2 people, it does get a little tiring.
It definitely does. Other challenges were we both had to deal with quarantines, and when that happens, obviously we can't see each other, so it was difficult to like kind of find times to make those cakes. There were just times when we're busy. Winnie and I were both seniors. We both play sports, class council, senate. So there were times where it was just we found that we wouldn't have a lot of time to just finishing out senior year, you obviously have a lot of schoolwork, you need to keep grades up. So it was just definitely challenging to find time together.
We also both went away during April vacation, which was great, but it was also 2 weeks, which is a significant part of the semester where we weren't allowed to meet up and play games. We weren't in our own kitchen. We didn't have our tools. It was just a lot of time lost.
Right. And then on top of just time, like the challenges of being busy, you're also going to have challenges with the actual cake baking itself. Cake can be difficult, when you're, like we discovered it's a lot easier to frost a vanilla cake than it is a chocolate cake. Because when you frost a chocolate cake with vanilla frosting, sometimes it ends up looking more like a cookies and cream cake than just a vanilla frosted cake because all the crumbs kind of show up in the frosting. So I think the challenges actually kind of helped us, learn what we can do. Now we know we can make a crumb coat and then put another coat of frosting on top of the chocolate cake.
Then you don't have to be looking at the chocolate with the vanilla frosting. That was something we definitely struggled with. We also are both kind of perfectionists in a way, so we would be decorating the cake and we could never get the texture right. We could never get it smooth enough. That was just something that we had to learn how to deal with. We had to find the right tools for it. And then we most of the time faced challenges with the materials involved. We went out and we bought a piping gun, which was a great idea until we realized that we had to change out the frosting and clean it out every single time we wanted to make a new texture. So like on this Easter egg cake, as you can see, Easter eggs traditionally have a lot of different colors and a lot of different textures. So each time we wanted to make a new texture, probably we had to clean out and just waste a ton of frosting.
All right, so for some new learnings and some outcomes, we realized that a piping gun, although it can be a bit of a challenge to clean sometimes, it will be your best friend. It's a lot easier than working with a piping bag because you can actually change the tip and like make the, you can push it out at a certain, you really have full creative freedom with it, which I think it's a lot just easier to use than a piping bag. Also great. Yeah, that's crucial. We also learned for us, whipped frosting is a lot easier to work with.
It's just easier to get the texture. It's easier to put into a piping gun. As you can see, in the top cake is our first cake we made for this project. We could not get texture. We couldn't make it so you couldn't see the chocolate cake through it, and it was because the frosting was so dense and it was hard to work with. So having definitely air and
And also, like I said earlier, we discovered that vanilla cake is a lot easier to work with over chocolate cake, and that was just that. Although chocolate cake is hard to work with, obviously we were able to overcome that just by learning how to do different coats and stuff on that.
And then, so one big part of this project that we didn't mention before was the social media aspect. We created an Instagram account dedicated to this cake, our cake journey, as we like to say. And we were managing that. We wanted it to kind of become a big part of this project. We wanted to have a big platform, which is very difficult to do. And as we face our challenges with time, we didn't dedicate as much time as we had hoped to in the beginning. But we did learn a lot from it. For example, we learned how to set up for the photos and edit the photos to make them look incredibly pleasing for the Instagram so that people will want to follow it. As I said, the first cake we baked is at the top. It's not a very pleasing photo. We had the frosting container top in it, and there was just no nice background. It wasn't on a nice clutter. Whereas the cake below was about halfway through this project. We started to just learn the beauties of a nice background and a clutter and just making it look very nice for the Instagram.
Right. And then for the organization aspect of it, so we did use Pinterest quite often, and with Pinterest, you're able to kind of make your own boards and also subsections within those Pinterest boards. And we were also able to create kind of lists, and just it really helped us organize all of our ideas into one area. And that was just a nice kind of structure to have throughout this project, because obviously, you're doing a lot yourself, so it's nice to be able to just have a place to put your ideas. So that definitely helps out a lot.
Yeah, we definitely learned a lot about organization by being able to create the subsections lot, that was a very time-consuming activity. So we would end up kind of just putting this on the back burner, which wasn't great, but it taught us a lot about time management. And as the semester ended, we kind of started to realize, oh wow, we should have done more. So looking back, we know what to fix if we were to do something like this again.
All right, so for our reflection, I think, at first, Winnie and I were a bit ambitious, and we definitely had to reel in our goals a bit and make it a little bit more realistic, because, we wanted to have a very major Instagram account, and I think our Instagram account had maybe a little less than 100 followers, and all of them were some of our close friends and, people in our grade, which, they liked the posts, they interacted, they were supportive, so that was great, but it didn't exactly reach a greater audience, but that's okay, we still had fun with it. Still fun to show that off. And then we also just kind of started coming up with more plans for our cakes, more so on the go. And just kind of had to figure out, we had to adjust our goals of finding cake to model our own after, because sometimes some were a lot harder than you think. But I think those were really just what we had to adjust for our goals.
We faced a lot of surprises throughout the way. It was very surprising how many different styles of cakes there were. As we were scrolling through Pinterest, we would find that there were certain styles that had names, and people dedicated their entire bakery to that certain style. And there were different styles for certain countries, and it was just all this whole world that we were completely born into. And so that was definitely really surprising for us. We also were surprised for how fast this project went. Now, this may be because we are second semester seniors, so it's supposed to go by very fast, but it was kind of caught us off guard when we got the email saying our final presentations were about.
Right. And I think for, what we do differently in this project is, obviously we talked about earlier, we wish that we had given this a bit more time to work on, just because I think we could have done a little bit more, which would have been really fun, but I think we're both content with how this project turned out. And also just, I would think we wish that we had followed more tutorials and done more of the copycat cakes that we talked about earlier, just because we know that following those procedures and following a tutorial is a great way to learn new techniques. And I think, also we wished the Instagram account had gotten a bit bigger, but I think we're both very happy with how the project turned out.
And for our final part of this project, we decided to make an entire dessert board surrounded by a cake. And so this was for my birthday a couple weeks ago. Abby decorated that cake, and I brought the other desserts. And I think one thing we would definitely do differently is we would make more dessert boards, because that was very fun to do, and it tasted delicious.
And I'd also like to say, if you know Winnie Leahy, you know that this is her as a cake. So, I think she did a good job with that. And also, we just want to say a big thank you to everyone who helped us throughout this project. This is Trip, this is Carlisle, this is Bar, and our mentor, Rebecca from Elizabeth Cakes. She was super helpful. Hey, Elizabeth, she was super helpful, and just gave us kind of some inspiration and stuff throughout this project that I think kind of led us in the right direction. So just a big thank you. All right.
I think it varies. Personally, I would say that this cake is my favorite. It was the one cake we did that we followed directly from a photograph. It's something we wanted to try for a while because it's a minimalist style, and so we've been seeing it all over the place, and it's just very aesthetic. Basically, all design on it.
I have to say, my favorite cake has to be Winnie Leahy cake. Just because we never done that sort of sprinkle design before, and it did end up taking a lot of time, but it was really very fun, and I think that we would figure out how to put sprinkles on like that. So there is no coconut on that. I know it looks a little bit kind of this is deceiving there, but they're just like a longer sprinkles. Yes, we make up for it.
Two questions. One, did you, like, this was an incredibly stressful semester. Was baking relaxing? Did you let other stuff go and just focus on something that was really enjoyable?
I would say we definitely got into it. So we got hyper focused on what we were doing, and we may have been getting stressed about that. Maybe something wasn't working. Maybe we had to scrap the cake again. But all in all, like we were focused on that, and we were focused on college and sports and all that other stressful stuff. So it was nice to have that little.
Well, Winnie and I
I did not get one.
Winnie and I definitely had a substantial amount.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask.
This was neat to for my family. These were consumed by us.
But we
the entire thing. And then this cake was another birthday cake. So we were making a lot of occasional cakes. And we had people share it with family, friends, stuff like that.
A question from the audience. If you had more time, how would you have approached getting more Instagram followers?
I think probably we could have done something promoting them on our own personal accounts, because I know Winnie and I, we didn't really do any, like, we didn't post it anywhere else, and we kind of just made the account, and we didn't really do any outreach or anything, so I think we probably could have promoted it a bit more, but that was just something that we just didn't have a chance to do.
We definitely would have found people, followed more people, and hope that they would follow back, and then we would just maybe show up on a Explore page or something like that as that happens.
I have a question. Did you bake from scratch? Did you use box cakes? Did you make your own frosting? Did you use store-bought frosting? And so with all that, do you have a favorite cake recipe, a favorite box cake, a favorite store-bought frosting, and a favorite homemade frosting?
Okay, so it definitely, I'm gonna try to hit all the, I'm gonna try to check all the boxes.
Okay.
So we did do a variety of box and then homemade and also box, or I guess can frosting and our own frosting. Just because, you know, Winnie and I, to an extent, liked to make the box ones more, just because it is a lot more convenient, and our project was more so focused on the decorating aspect. I think we only made a scratch cake once. And
that was also the only time we made scratch frosting.
Right, yeah.
But I will say, I think that we didn't continue, that was one of our earlier things, we didn't continue with the frosting from scratch because it wouldn't stick on cake. And so it wasn't working very well. We knew that we had a reliable frosting and the store-bought frosting. So we did do that. As for our favorites, yeah, we definitely made confetti.
Confetti gals right here. That's awesome.
I've actually been struggling with this a lot. I'm doing a lot of thinking recently because with my birthday coming up and the end of high school coming up and all these big events that include cakes, I had to stop and think chocolate or vanilla. Now, when it comes to a box mix, the vanilla always surprises you, the chocolate kind of always disappoints you. So that left me thinking, are we buying the wrong kind of chocolate? Because I think Devil's Food Cake sounds amazing, but it's always disappointing. So really, like, there's so many different variations, and you really have to take the time to find the right one, which we did not get the chance to do.
As you can see, Winnie's very passionate about
it. Clearly.
And I always want more from it. So it's been definitely something I've struggled with the last 3 months.
When you did make your frosting from scratch, what was the most difficult part?
It did not go as planned. I had made that frosting before we started the ELO, and it melted, and I was able to pour it. This was clumpy, and it wasn't sticking to the cake. It was just falling off.
Yeah, everything about it was just, it was just bad. It just wasn't, it was not good. It was not good. But it was okay.
Next is Doxy. She's going to talk about curricula and social emotional learning that she researched and how we might incorporate it into courses at YHS. Hi, I'm Ella, and I'm a junior. And so this past semester, I studied SEL learning and how it was being implemented in Yarmouth and how we would improve it. So I'll start out by defining SEL. SEL is the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, and establish and maintain positive relationships and make good decisions. So, as you can see, there are 5 pillars of SEL. And so throughout my research, this is kind of what I targeted. So there's self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social okay. So my resources that I used for this project, the big one that I used was SEL for me. So when I started this project, Maine had just come out with a new SEL curriculum that was free and accessible. So that's kind of, I guess that's kind of what got me interested in the topic in the first place. And so that is where I kind of spent a lot of my time researching and focusing on where to look for lesson plans and curriculum ideas. And then Panorama Education was where I found my mentor, Nicole, and basically I used that site to kind of find ideas for making surveys to kind of figure out from YHS students exactly what we need to improve on. So I sat in on a senior health class and I had them take this survey. So all of the seniors took the survey and it was basically just kind of pulling what they think needs to be improved upon when it comes to SEL in YHS. And so these were the results. So these were kind of like the most important pieces of data that I collected. So I have them rate the part that YHS played in teaching SEL on a scale from 1 to 5. And so obviously you can see that they ranked it kind of on the lower end. So that was to be expected, and that's what got me interested in this learning opportunity in the first place. And I just wanted to kind of work with my students to make it as like to the best that it could be. And so then I also asked if students felt like YHS cared about their individual well-being. And around 2/3 of them agreed that YHS did for the most part. And then there was a third that felt like there was kind of a disconnect between staff and students, and any like care for well-being was performative and not genuine. And so I kind of wanted to target this third of students that felt that way and try to find ways to fix this for them and kind of improve our curriculum for it. And then I also wanted to target what concepts that they felt like wasn't being taught well enough. So this way I can focus that in my learning and my research and kind of make design or lesson plans designed around that. So my takeaways from the data, I talked earlier about those pillars of SEL, and the pillars that I took away that needed to be targeted were social awareness, self-awareness, and self-management. And so from there, I kind of took these 3 pillars and I got to
And I, obviously, they are very broad, they're kind of like umbrella pillars, and there's a lot of different like concepts that go into each one, which is kind of listed on that image. And so for the purpose of time today, I'm only gonna go into one lesson plan that I'm roughly designing. So we're gonna focus on self-management for the purpose of this presentation. And so obviously you can see there are a bunch of different topics under the self-management umbrella. Those being self-control, stress management, focus, problem solving, goal setting, and resilience. And so if you're talking to YHS students, YHS is very academically demanding of its students, and so a lot of students wanted to focus on stress management, which I wasn't surprised about, and I thought was totally fair. So from here, I kind of went on to develop a very rough type of lesson plan that I use when sitting down with Ms. Thomas and trying to incorporate it into our curriculum. And so when I went about this, obviously I wanted to tackle mindfulness, and so I was just kind of thinking of what would be most beneficial to the students, because I didn't want it to feel patronizing to them, and I wanted it to be something where they could actually gain something from it. And so I first wanted to start by identifying stress, because I think stressors can be very subjective, depending on the person. And so I wanted to start by kind of just having them define that for themselves and having them have that kind of broad discussion, just so they could identify it in themselves, and then they could use mindfulness to combat it. And so then I would also want to use mindfulness stations, which I found on the SEL website. And so I didn't want them to feel like mindfulness was just one thing, and so I wanted to make it kind of like a station series where the students could kind of have a list of mindfulness things that they could choose from, like drawing or breathing or just kind of being in nature or anything that they feel would calm them down and help them when they had stressor in their lives. And so I think it's important to kind of let this be self-directed, because I think it's going to be different for everyone. And so then I would also want to focus on different types of breathing, because although that's not the only type of mindfulness, I think it's really important just to kind of ground yourself. And I did it in my way class at the start of every class, and I found it to be very beneficial. Just kind of like halfway through the day, just taking a minute to just focus on the breathing and relaxation. So challenges throughout this project were, I talked a little bit about performative and patronizing lesson plans. And what I mean by this is, like, for example, when I went into the mindfulness category of the main SEL curriculum, a lot of them felt like very performative type of lesson plans. Like, their idea of mindfulness was like the group taking a deep breath, and then the learning goal would be students will learn how to manage stress and ease anxiety. And it just didn't feel like that was actually going to do anything for the students taking part in it. And so I wanted to steer away from that. And then self-directed learning, I thought was very interesting and new for me. And I did like it. I think some challenges were that I am a second semester junior, so I had to make sure that I was like keeping up with my core classes and maintaining my GPA, because I am going to have to apply for colleges next semester in the fall. And so every couple of days I would kind of be reminded that, like, oh, I have an ELO that I have to focus on, and I would kind of have to jump back to it. And so it was kind of like a shift in balance for a lot of the semester. I'm just trying to identify how to target my audience and make it the most beneficial for the students. Because I didn't want it to be a class that they just felt like they had to sit through and was a joke. Like, I wanted to be able to help them because YHS is very demanding of the students, and I don't want there to be a disconnect between faculty and students, and I want students to learn how to manage their stress properly. And as far as COVID goes, I know a lot of other kids have said this, but I didn't find that COVID obstructed my ability to do this ELO at all. If anything, it made it easier because my mentor, Nicole, was pretty far away, and so Zoom and Google Meets weren't so accessible. I don't think I would have gotten to have him as a mentor, and I think a lot of it was just kind of research and self-directed anyway, and so I think online meetings made it a lot more for me to scale up. And so my reflection is I definitely learned a lot about targeting my questions. And so in the beginning, I wasn't sure where to start. And so I sat down with Miss Tripp. And I was kind of like, I don't really know how to target this. And so she helped me come up with the idea of making a survey for seniors and seniors because they kind of most accurately reflect on their 4 years in Yarmouth and what they learned and what is lacking. And so that was something that really helped me get started. And so I think my next steps are definitely to meet with Ms. Thomas a couple times and continue to try to figure out, because I think this is going to be very collaborative, but try to figure out how we can enroll this at YHS and how we can work into this plans. And so that's what I'm currently doing and will continue to do in the next couple of weeks. And then my thank yous are especially to Ms. Tripp, who was my advisor this past semester, and she was always very willing to meet with me and very concerned about how I was doing and how it was going, and took a very holistic approach and was just very supportive throughout the entire process. And then also Nicole, who was my mentor, and he was just very passionate about his work because obviously SEL curriculum is what he does for a living. And so he was great about providing me material and ideas for how to kind of target my questions. And then also to Ms. Barnes. So, questions.
You mentioned putting this into lesson plans, but how do you see that? Like, are you thinking advisory? Are you thinking health class? What's your goal for that, those lesson plans?
That was part of my survey was where do you think this would most effectively like resonate as kind of being turned into a lesson plan and where to see it. And a little over half of the students said that they would prefer to learn it in home science. And so I think there will definitely be opportunities to see this kind of amped up in other classes, but I also think it's good to make that connection between social emotional learning and health science since it's already pretty common. So I think I will be working with Ms. Thomas to go into the health science.
Great, thanks.
I wonder if you've thought about talking with one of your slides mentioned professional development, because I've been talking with my advisees this year about practices that have been helpful for them from teachers. It was a lot of them mentioned just a teacher taking 2 or 3 minutes at the beginning of a class just to have a moment of quiet. And some of that training of teachers, in
run up there and tell them.
Tyler Roderick is next. He's going to talk about his ELO on careers related to camera and video.
Alright, my name is Tyler, and I'm a senior, and I'm going to be talking about my camera career exploration project. So basically what I'm going to talk about is the seed project that I did, the interviews I did, and the projects I did as practically. So for my learning goal, my original goal for the project was to explore my knowledge on working with cameras and to conduct interviews of people who use cameras in their occupations. As I was working on the project, my goal changed to practicing more my skills with cameras. So the first one I want to talk about is the seed project. It is about, well, the seed project I worked with a bunch of students, and basically SEED stands for Students Empowered to End Dependency. And basically what we did with this project is a documentary about substance abuse. And the original goal for the project was to create a couple episodes that would air on TV. The project turned into 12 episodes that aired on WAGM, WGME, and WABI. And what did I do with this project? I worked with Dave Packham and students from schools in the local area, and I attended Zoom meetings, participated in discussions, and was giving feedback about the project. Independently, I worked on some editing for the project, so I did some editing footage for the project towards the end here. What surprised me here about the project was addition, they added social media to the project, so that was something that they weren't going to do at the beginning, but they added on as they kept doing it, and they have a website you can go to here. The challenges with the SEED project was that the meetings had to be held on Zoom. Usually they have meetings in person, but because of COVID-related problems, they had to have the meetings on Zoom. And I was only informed on the meetings a few days before the actual date. So it was difficult because sometimes it interfered with my schoolwork, after school activities, or homework I had to do. So that was a big factor, was trying to figure out if I could make it to a meeting or if I had to do school. So the next one I'm going to talk about is the interviews that I did. Basically, I interviewed 4 people working in the media field. What I did was I had to interview people who work with media and come up with questions to ask. I put all my questions into a doc before starting the interview process. I audio recorded the interviews so I could look back at the information. What surprised me about the interviews was having a family made the job challenging because it requires waiting for a long period of time to film, and choosing between having fun versus doing the job can be challenging. For example, one person was hired to film ski trails. He had difficulty choosing between focusing on his job versus skiing for fun. The people I interviewed went to college for something. One of the people I interviewed went to college something completely different, and he had to take one night course. So that's one of the things I learned, and that's what I learned. The challenges with the interviews was that the interviews were not in person and were held on Zoom. The timing, posting, and scheduling of the meetings took a lot of coordination. Sometimes I had to send 2 or 3 emails just to schedule a meeting with the person. Sometimes I would ask someone if they wanted to do it. They would say yes, and then ask them a time, and they would not give me an exact time, so I had to keep asking them over and over until eventually I got a time that worked for them and a time that worked for me. And this was the first time I myself had to schedule meetings on Zoom and be the person in charge. So being the person in charge is different from just clicking it, going into it, watching it. You actually have to send it out, schedule it, and then recording it on Zoom. I had to learn how to do that, so that was a little different. So learning how to use Zoom was a big part of the whole interview process. So next one I'm going to talk about is a project with Travis Lee. Basically, Travis Lee is my mentor. He's a sports anchor with WMTW, and he was my mentor throughout the process of doing all these projects. What I did with him was we find a recent article for the Prologue Press Herald, then make a video about it. The article will cover any topic. What surprised me, finding an article from the forum, what surprised me was having the opportunity to work on this project with Travis, as this was not part of my original plan for the project. This wasn't my original plan to do a project with him. What I did was I designed an article for the Prologue Press Herald and made a plan. I go to the location and prepare my camera ahead of time by changing batteries, getting an SD card or memory card, cleaning cameras, and etc. At the location, I would film the area by taking videos and photos. Then I would transfer the footage from the camera to the computer, then begin editing, and then I would schedule a meeting with Travis to go over the video. Based on his feedback, then I would make a final changes on my project. So the challenges was that batteries dying as I thought if I charged the batteries ahead of time, I realized I didn't, so equipment basically need to charge it, or stuff that happens with the camera, like the camera would die, or maybe I put the lighting too high on the camera and the picture would turn out blurry. Having a deadline for the project was challenging because both filming and editing requires a certain amount of time. And for this project, I would make deadlines for myself, or Travis would make a deadline for me so I can meet them at a certain time. And that goes with all the projects that I've done. Deadlines are very important because people want you to get your work done on time, or else they will take someone else. Like for the seed project, they were asking for people, and so they wanted it on time because they had to schedule it. So the takeaways that I had from each of these, for the seed project, this was the first opportunity that I had working on a professional documentary. I learned so much, including how to go about getting sponsors, time management, how money was a factor, and what each person in the documentary was doing. This experience was so amazing. I now know why documentaries or films take so long to be made and get delayed all the time. So my takeaways for the interviews was I was fortunate to be able to interview so many different people and learn something from each of them. Although they were different, at the same time they were the same. So like they all went to college, but one of them didn't go to school for the job he has now. I learned more about the amount of work they put into be where they are today. They all started at the bottom, sometimes being paid or not. Once they got recognized for their hard work, they moved up and started making good pay while also having fun. Because one of the people I interviewed, he went from the very bottom, being not paid at all or volunteering, all the way up to he hires everyone, hires the editors, the film people, the crew. He hires everyone, so he said he started at the bottom, and he went all the way up, and he says, depending on what you want to do, if you want to be at the bottom, or if you want to be in the middle or up, you gotta keep working your way up. Got to start somewhere. So the takeaway that I have for the project was Travis Lee is I learned deadlines are a big deal, and you have to plan the whole project based on it. Knowing when you will shoot footage or when you are going to edit changes based on the deadline. There could be no excuses because the project had to be done on time. I guess like I said previously, it goes for all these projects. Deadlines were the biggest factor that I had to make. You set yourself a deadline or someone sets you a deadline, you gotta be on time. There's no excuses. Or else they might take someone else, or you might just not do the work. After working on this ELO project, I still want to pursue an education and career with cameras. Now knowing the education and work it takes, I will have a better understanding and preparation for my future. So when I did the video project with Travis Lee, I chose to do one of a few that I did two of them, but one that I'm going to show you is I did one on the Boiler Conservation Trust. They opened up 32 acres for Map Preserve. It was opened up to the public, it was a private owned land. And so it used to be privately owned in North Yarmouth. And they won't, the people that owned it, they wanted to open it up to the land, basically for everyone to go see, because they weren't really doing anything with it. They were just having it for themselves, and they felt that they should like open it up. So this is one of the videos, the video I made, and I can share it with you.
There's a lot of you again.
If anyone has questions.
What will your next steps be in terms of exploring some more and getting more education?
My next steps after this project, I'll probably go into college, probably doing like some courses in media, probably learning from people who are experienced in college, probably that's my next steps.
Oh yeah, are you interested in just photography or also camera work and photography?
I'm interested in both, in the videography and photography. I'm interested in.
Very.
What was your favorite thing to film?
My favorite thing to film is probably the locations were fun to film. I like filming. This video was fun to film because I got to go on a trail and walk in and see all like animals and stuff. I like to do that. The second video that I filmed was another trail, so I like to do nature a lot. So I like to film nature. Sometimes I like to film people, but I more like to film nature and scenes like that.
How long does it take you to edit?
Editing, it can take me up to like 4 to 5 hours to edit, and that's without like getting feedback on it. So that's like when I start editing. Once I get feedback, it'll take me like another 2 to 3 hours to complete the editing.
I like more being behind the camera than editing. Editing is a lot of music and you gotta put it all together. Behind the camera, you can actually be at the location and see what's happening. And that's what I more like to do. Be at the location, see what people are doing, see the animals, and be at the scene instead of having to be behind the computer and look at it and edit it, put it together. That's what I more like to be at the location.
Bella Milchinsky, and she's going to talk about her experience writing a novel. Or starting a novel.
Sorry, I'm short. Hello, I'm Isabella Malzinski, and for my ELO project, I learned how to write a novel. So, first off, my goals for this project was to write a novel and learn how to edit and research how a regular author would work through the publishing system to try and get their work publicized. But as I went through this project, I quickly came to realize that I wasn't really interested in researching that aspect. I quickly became very invested in what actually went into creating a novel, the world building, characterization, plot. It was much more interesting than just the regular, how does an author get into the publishing industry? Now, my actual goals for the project are create a novel, develop my writing skills, learn how to commit to a project, and have fun with it. Now, my approach. First off, what is this novel supposedly about? Now, I wanted to create a fantasy novel, so here is my summary. An era of war, famine, and pestilence was brought on by the existence of the silenced, people brought back to life through necromancy, across all nations, eventually burning them to the ground and causing people to flee. It is now 500 years later, in the new sovereignship of Winnie, a land far away from troubles of the age of necromancy. The sun Noxie is silenced. Shenanigans ensue. Now, part of creating a novel is learning how to create characters. Now, my process for creating characters is visual boards. The thoughts I had in mind for this process are, who are they? What will they become? What are their interests, fears, and weaknesses? What do they look like? And what is their background? I was particularly invested in what they look like part, as you can see by the several images I have inserted here. Mostly because when you read a novel, you sort of create a vision of what the character looks like in your mind. You may imagine them to be Anne Hathaway or Tom Selleck. But say this character actually gets brought to life, and they're nothing like you imagine them to be. What I want to do is create a clear image in your mind and bring that image to life clearly and precisely how you imagine it to be. Now, as for the actual writing part, what I want to do is create a sort of third-person novel, which is creating an omniscient narrator, and they narrate the events and are told to you. Now, this here is a small excerpt of the prologue I have written. For a bit of context, as I'm sure that none of you have even heard of this before, Dorman Al-Fawaz is the victim of a massacre at the Liao Research and Development Institute, and he is currently on the escape from two women, Lala and Mari. Just as he is about to make his escape outside of the institute, he is caught by a mysterious unnamed woman and is killed. And now, I shall proceed to read. Forgive my horrible narration. And then, Dorman Al-Fawaz makes a break for it and gets the hell out of Liao Research and Development Institute and scrubs his mind of whatever the hell he just went through. Or at least, that's what he was planning before death decided to throttle him by the throat, like he was the unwitting victim of some sort of cosmic joke, just as he was making his break into the evergreen woods surrounding the institute. Not today, Death seemed to whisper. We're not done with you yet. Now, an important part of creating a novel is the world building and research behind it. Say you want to create a medieval setting. Okay, now you have to create the society. Because an intricate part of world building is you are creating a world. And part of that world is researching every detail that comes with it. Take our world, for example. Our world is created with a myriad of cultures, intricate social rules, foods, religions, and whatever else you can think of. Even more we can possibly imagine. And it is very difficult to translate that into one single thing. So I have to put a serious amount of thought into creating that level of difficulty into a fictional world. So the way I would try to put this in mind is creating a set of rules that world building you have to keep in mind, such as society, social rules, practices, culture, food, practices, clothing, humor, etc. Economy, business, and career, a magic system, architecture, technology, cities, states, countries, etc. History, agriculture, medicine, religion, and immigration. Now, as you can see here, I try to develop these steps by creating, well, let's take, for example, medicine. How do doctors work in my world? Over there, you can see an image of a plague doctor. In my world, the doctors are known as plague doctors. Okay, why are they plague doctors? Because long ago, during the age of necromancy I previously mentioned, the silence spread around multiple diseases, and acted as essentially biological weapons. So essentially, these people, plague doctors, would work to heal these diseases, plagues and such, and essentially became known as plague doctors. That is just one of many things you have to keep in mind as a part of world building. Challenges and COVID-19. Now, one of the many challenges of writing a novel is actually writing. And let's not keep in mind the year we've had, COVID, dealing with classes as a junior, taking AP classes, and the fact that I am a procrastinator even on a good day, writer's block, and essentially creating the motivation of actually writing. And dealing with all sorts of pressures just in one day, in one single experience, is a very hard thing to deal with. And I eventually started to feel quite a bit of doubt and self-esteem issues because I had created such high expectations for myself that I felt that I couldn't accomplish them. And then I began to realize, okay, I don't accomplish them, then what? Well, I actually like doing this project, so it's okay. There are no consequences. It is a novel. I enjoy doing this. Maybe I get burnt out, I put it down, and then I keep going. You keep going. As far as the COVID-19 part, it didn't take too much of an impact on my actual project. I received a lot of advice from my mentor, Bruce Spang, and I received most of it through emails, which I think I would have received even without taking COVID-19 into factor. And I had quite a few meetings with my advisor, Ms. Robertson, even taking into consideration COVID-19. So I felt like I had quite a few resources available to me, even taking COVID-19 into consideration. Now, the outcome. So far, I have created one prologue that's 3 pages, 1,314 words long, as well as another chapter in development, but that is something we will not go into. And as far as writing, I have developed quite a bit of patience and appreciation for the craft, mostly due to how much detail you have to put into it, how much of yourself you have to put into it, the world building, the characters, and it essentially becomes a bit like your own child. You have taken great lengths to care for this child, and now it is yours, and you will keep on investing into it because you love doing this. And I also learned how to edit and write to my liking because essentially I started this project for myself. I will continue to do it for myself. I know I like doing it, and I will continue to improve. Now, I just want to give my thanks out to my mentor, Bruce Spain, and my advisor, Ms. Robertson, for the advice and help they gave me during troubling times and during the self-doubt I was going through. As far as the future of this book, I think I do want to continue writing this book because I'm really invested into how this will play out. I'm not even done writing the ending, and I don't know if I ever will be, but I'm certainly interested in trying. Thank you. Any questions?
Bill, I have a question for you. I know that you love to read, and can you tell us some of the books that you've read recently that kind of, I don't know, gave you some like inspiration for your project? Either just like writing that you really admire, or like ideas or techniques that you'd like to try out for yourself.
Books I've recently read. I wouldn't say it's books that I've taken into consideration, but rather it's more like movies and series and such. Because when I look at my book, I look and I see a world that I am creating, and it's much easier to imagine a creation if you're seeing it visually. So in terms of that, I'd say series like Castlevania, or video games such as Undertale or Celeste.
Did you see Tina's question?
Oh yeah, a question from online. Will you share your novel when you finish it? Miss Snow is asking.
I think I might. Maybe I'll try to get it published. Maybe I'll share it anonymously on some random writing site. Who knows? Is that it? Okay. Thank you.
So our final presentation this evening is Jared Puckett. He also participated in the mentor program and talked to us a little bit about a design he created for a transit station in Brunswick.
Yep, keep going. This way, keep going a little more. Right about there is great. Oh. Justine, he's not quite in the light, so I don't know. Can you go a little bit closer to the podium? Towards the podium? That would be great. There we go. That's much better. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Jared Ryan. My role was my Ace Mentor project and a solo design project of mine. These are the different things I will go over in my presentation. My learning goal, my approach, the challenges and successes I had, the impacts of COVID-19, my self-publishing learnings. ACE is an architecture, construction, and engineering program for high school students. It is a nonprofit that teams up with private firms. Each week we had an opportunity to meet with a professional from each field. I was inspired to pursue this because I have an interest in architecture and engineering. COVID-19 mostly impacted getting to meet in person, having site tours of construction sites. My goal was to learn more about architecture and engineering to see if either one would be a possible career for me. To see if that would be the case, I went to most of the meetings where there was a speaker each week from one of these careers. My project was to work on parcel number 8, which is a transit center with another student from Portland High School. The requirements for this project were that the site was designated for a transit center for the Amtrak West Line. The site could also support retailer functions. The challenges that existing rail lines that are in this image had to remain. And some constraints for it were that it could be no taller than 4 stories or 65 feet tall. And then the project was to design an element of a new neighborhood development. We had to have many different drawings, conceptual sketches and massings, site plans and diagrams that scale, other additional details, elements, or concepts. 3D models were not required, but a nice addition. And as you'll see later on in my presentation, I did make a 3D model. Groupings and massings help to show where things will go and the different measurements. I chose some of the landscaping materials for this project to block the site with trains, which is what this hedges kind of for. And then others were just stylistic reasons for to kind of just fill in the ground of the transit center. I feel like what worked well for me on this project was creating floor plans and drawings for the transit center on SketchUp for Schools. And SketchUp for Schools is a program used to make 2D drawings and 3D models for architects and engineers. This specific program was more for students, so it was pretty easy to learn. And then I chose a lot of these interior and exterior details of furniture for stylistic purposes to make and show that the building would be more modern. Then this is a picture of my 3D model of my transit center, and this right here is the entrance of the building. Over here to the left is a parking lot, and there's a roundabout where people would drop off people and stuff before they go get
bus or on a train, which the train platform is back here. And this is just like a little road for like buses to like pick up people along here. And then this is a better view of what like the entrance would look like. And then this is like a picture of the train platform. And then over here is where like buses would park at the trains. And then this is a better view. And the most challenging part of this project was trying to make the 3D model in SketchUp for schools because of all the different heights and measurements plus all the details. These are just some other pictures of my 3D model. I chose some of these architectural materials to make a modern building and others for like shade or environmental reasons, like the solar panels to help the environment, and then this was more to keep shade out, like in the area where you would drop off people. And then for the end of the ACE program year, I was most satisfied with my ability to make a 2D floor plan and a 3D model of the transit center with the help of SketchUp for schools. I met my goal because I now know that I have an interest in a career in engineering. Also, at the end of ACE, because of all my work and effort, I got a scholarship that will help me to go to an engineering school.
Wow. That's cool.
And then, in addition to my project, after I was done with the ACE, I decided to use SketchUp for schools to create the plan to rearrange my bedroom. So that's what this is. And I did this because I really enjoyed using the program in SketchUp. And these are just some other images of how I rearrange my bedroom using SketchUp. And then this learning model worked very well for me, if I'm being honest. I really enjoyed this experience better than traditional classroom learning because more was done in groups. And the experience of learning in an ELO gave me a lot more freedom and control over the whole process when compared to my traditional classes. Even though this was like a lot more structured than most people's ELOs, just because it was like an after-school program, so there was some structure to it. But like with like after the ACE year had ended, I had more freedom because I got to like a project kind of my choice. And compared to other ELOs, this was also like not in just one semester; it's kind of over 2 semesters. I am very grateful to have had the opportunity to participate in these and to get a scholarship to help me get the career I want. And then I would like to thank Ms. Carlisle and then my mentor who was like in charge of the ACE mentor program in Portland, Ben Winchell. It was a very fun experience going through ACE and just getting to have some and getting to learn a lot of different things. Any questions? I really like working with another person. I think that made it a lot easier than if I would have done it on my own. Just because like I got to, they gave ideas that maybe I hadn't thought of during the project and help like probably make the project like turn out a lot better than if I would have done it on my own. And then also I think working in groups was like very like helpful to me just because it kind of like helped me to know that like if I go into this field that I will have to work in groups a lot, and it kind of prepares me for that.
You talked about really having this convince you that you want to be in the field of engineering. much in here that was beyond what I think of when I think of engineering, from landscape to furnishings, things like that. What parts of the design did you enjoy the most? I mean, engineering is a part of it, then just the rest of the design. What part do you like the most?
I think, well, this was definitely the ACE thing was more on the architectural side, but there definitely were some aspects of engineering with like the measurements and stuff. But I think that I probably for this enjoyed the most making the 3D model just because I had a lot of creative freedoms with it.
Is that something that you and your partner divided up, or did you work on it together?
The 3D model I did, but my partner he did a lot of the like landscaping stuff and like what went on outside the building and some of the different heights of the building.
Very cool. No, nothing.
Say thank you to all of you for coming this evening. I know there are mentors probably watching online, but as you can see, all of these projects are very collaborative and continue to get out